Chapter 176. Everything was going according to plan. AI Ma had predicted that Sarah would use the Sphinx's shadow stomp to restrain the gold beast. Sarah had predicted that AI Ma would use the golden treasure box to help the gold beast get rid of the shadow stomp control. So, she had prepared a secret ritual card. Asben's Words of the Dead. Legend had it that in the ancient times, the great alchemist Asben was punished by the gods because the items he refined were blasphemous. Asben had foreseen the coming of the punishment in advance, and set up a blood circle to release the soul before falling into hell. Even the god could not escape from Asben's curse and finally died in endless pain. When the Sphinx's blood spilled on the magic circle, the trigger condition of Asben's Words of the Dead was met. Asben's Words of the Dead devoured the last bit of the Sphinx's life and used its soul as a medium to inflict the most painful torture on the gold beast. Even the mechanical-type gold beast could not resist the curse of the dead. Remember, // M. Vipkanshu. 6. However, AI Ma did not panic when she saw the gold beast's magic power decreasing by 100 points per second. Gold devour. The ferocious gold beast turned its head and bit the golden treasure box that was used to confuse the Sphinx. The box was made of gold, but it was still full of gold. The gold beast bit the golden treasure box and chewed it hard and swallowed it. Its body immediately burst out with a rich golden light. After all, it was a secret ritual card based on the legend. The gray shadow that shot into the gold beast's body was forced out by the golden light. The gold beast's magic power limit increased by 500 points. The abnormal status was dispelled. Even its defense and attack increased by 100 points each. Magic power, 1,300-1,800. Attack, 1,300-1,400. Defense, 1,800-1,900. Not only did the gold beast recover, but its attributes were also comparable to the peak of 4 stars. This chain that could not be used in the duel with Dake due to the summoning speed limit was finally successfully used in the duel with Sarah. Sarah did not expect Emma to have this hidden card up her sleeve, and her expression changed drastically. She hurriedly looked at the cards in her hand, looking for a solution. On the other side of the battlefield, the Anubis had used Shadow Hunt to scrape off 200 mana points from the 777 treasure chest monster. The Anubis returned to its original speed and began to chase after the 777 treasure chest monster. The golden beast clawed at the death mummy's back, but it only managed to leave 3 bloody scratches. It grabbed the back of the death mummy's neck and flew away. The dead mummy, on the other hand, hugged the magic conducting ball in its stomach tightly with its eyes closed. In short, the battlefield was divided, and neither side could take down the other for the time being. Ida. The second round passed in the blink of an eye. Sarah finally drew the magic card she wanted in the third round. AI Ma's golden beast swooped down and killed the Anubis. Seeing the Anubis turn into a beam of light and return, Sala summoned her second 3-star magic elf. Living Mummy. Card name, Living Mummy. Type, Elf card. Level, *****. Race, Undying. Attribute, Dark. Mana, 1200. Attack, 1000. Defense, 1000. Ultimate skill, Rebirth of Darkness. The living mummy's body was still wrapped in bandages, but more of her skin was exposed, including her delicate face, which was already glowing with vitality. The crown on her head and the staff in her hand were indicative of her identity when she was alive. The ultimate skill was a godly skill that could allow a dark elemental magic elf to return to the battlefield. Rebirth of Darkness. The time of death was limited to 3 minutes. The resurrection lasted for 3 minutes. In a duel, it was only 6 rounds. The living mummy, who appeared with one knee on the ground, did not care about the death mummy that was still in the hands of the golden beast. She stomped her staff on the ground, and with a soft chant that sounded like weeping and complaining, a circle of ripples that were as clear as water spread out from the center of the staff. The Sphinx cat that Sarah had placed on the table suddenly trembled violently. She stretched out a finger and pressed on the edge of the magic elf card. Then, the shadow of a cat came out and landed beside the living mummy in the blink of an eye. Meow! The Sphinx cat returned to the battlefield. After hearing the ear-piercing cat's meow, AI Ma's originally victorious expression suddenly changed. She hurriedly took out a white card from her hand. However, after the living mummy completed the Rebirth of Darkness secret skill, she raised her staff high and charged forward. The Sphinx cat followed closely behind. As a 3-star magic elf, the living mummy's 3 measurements were not considered high, but looking down, it was at the top of the 2-star magic elf list. Her movements were abnormally agile, and the treasure chest monster that only knew how to jump and run could not escape at all. She hit its head with her staff, and it immediately screamed in pain. Even though AI Ma knew what would happen if she went down at this time, she still had to order the golden beast to fly down quickly. As expected, the Sphinx cat's skill cooldown reset after it was reborn, and it stepped on the shadow of the golden beast and froze it in place. The next moment, the living mummy used her staff to kill the treasure chest monster and held the red magic ball in her hand. The white card in AI Ma's hand was not even comparable to the 777 treasure chest monster in terms of 3 measurements, and it had no summoning value. Before the golden beast could break free, Sarah ordered the living mummy to break the red magic ball's life enchantment. 10000. The battle is over. Winner, Sarah Swati. Although this battle had only lasted for a short 2 minutes, both contestants had done their best and used all their trump cards. No matter how unwilling AI Ma was, she had to admit that her deck was completely suppressed by Sarah in terms of strength. Whether it was the Sphinx cat, the death mummy, or the living mummy, they were all beyond her imagination. As expected of the first seat of the Magic Academy, AI Ma gritted her teeth and began to pack up her cards. A temporary defeat would not discourage her, and she would win it back the next time. However, just as she put the golden beast and gold coin bug back into the magic card, she suddenly realized that Sarah did not pack up her cards. Instead, she tiptoed and looked down as if she was looking for something. After searching for a long time, Sarah's eyes suddenly lit up. She finally found the golden-haired young man who had defeated her in the losers group. She did not hide her excitement at all, and directly waved at the young man in front of everyone. When Dake's eyes met hers, she smiled sweetly. "I'm back." Chapter 177. Even though AI Ma knew that this meant I fought my way up from the loser's bracket, she still felt that something was wrong. She frowned and walked down from the stage. She felt a little stifled in her heart. She couldn't touch it and couldn't hold it. The students of the Knights Institute didn't make things difficult for her because of her defeat. Instead, they welcomed her warmly. Her performance in this duel alone was enough to make people respect her. AI Ma gradually recovered under Susan and Lucy's comfort. But deep in her heart, she had a stronger desire to win the duel. The last duel of the loser's bracket ended just like that. Only the finals were left in the entire competition. The students who watched up to this point were still somewhat unsatisfied. Even though the in-class duels might not be as exciting as the official duels, the contestants were all students of the same grade who frequently interacted with them. Plus, they felt a sense of honor from being in the same school, which made them feel more immersed. The first website was https://vipcanshu. Vapa the Knights Institute and the Fools Institute felt very regretful. The Aristocrats Institute and Magic Devices Institute gradually became more hostile. It was as if there were electric sparks colliding between Doran and Heidi, as if they were about to fight at any time. As for Dark and Sarah, they each found a place to sit down. One replenished his mana, the other adjusted his mana. On the bench in the same position, Dake took out the deck. Now that Sarah's trump cards were mostly exposed, whether it was the Sphinx cat or the living mummy, they were very troublesome. The tactics used to deal with AI Ma clearly couldn't be used. In order to win, he needed to adjust the deck accordingly. Dake first took out the magic cards of the Big Sin series. Pride I, Pride 2, Bliss 3. Among them, Pride 2's cooldown was still not up, but Bliss 3 could be used. Pride Eye's cooldown should be up before the finals. Since Bliss 3's flaw needed Pride Eye to make up for it, these 2 magic cards were a must. Correspondingly, Illusory Beast Ibu should also be added to his hand. In addition, Kettle Kettle and Trash Slime that could enter Kettle Kettle's body were also a must. After that, I chose 2 cards from Big Milk and Diru Beast and Fairy Ibu. The rest. After careful consideration, Dake decided to reject both. Magical Beast, Ibu, Trash Slime, Kettle, Diru Beast, Fairy Ibu, Pride Eye, Bliss 3. Hence, a set of pure magic cards was formed. There were a total of 7 magic cards, simplified to the extreme. This also reduced the randomness to a minimum. After Dake put away the card, Deanna and Luo C walked over in small steps. Deanna handed him a milk candy and muttered, "You must win." Dake opened the candy wrapper and squeezed the candy into his mouth before saying, "No problem." Luo C smiled and took the candy wrapper from his hand. "Good luck." "Good luck then." Dake calmed himself down and walked towards the arena. The students had already surrounded Arena 1, and the atmosphere was unusually lively. In order to prevent the students from the aristocrats and sorcerers from quarreling, the professors had no choice but to intervene and chase them to the 2 sides of the arena. The students from the aristocrats consciously gathered on the side of the red arena. Next to it was the Night Academy led by AI Ma. Dark glanced around and walked towards the red team's contestant stage. "Hey Dake." Someone suddenly called out. Dark turned his head to look at him and smiled. "What's the matter, Doran?" Doran's face turned slightly red, then he raised his fist and clenched it hard. "Bring my share of good luck." Dake was a little stunned, but he still replied without leaving a trace. "Okay." Seeing that Doran had received a response, the other boys beside him hurriedly shouted, "We have a share too. Don't forget, there's still me. You must do your best. Keep the champion in the Aristocrats Academy." Dake didn't think that a mere in-class competition would make the little magister so excited. But when he thought about it carefully, this in-class competition was indeed very different from the first in-class competition. It was more like a formal competition. Moreover, the intensity of the competition was far greater than the first one. For the little magisters, this was perhaps the first duel in their hearts. Dake waved his fist at them and replied, "Definitely." He walked onto the arena. The students from the Night Academy looked at the Aristocrats Academy with envy. In fact, no one didn't want their students to enter the finals, but their AI Ma had already done her best. "There's nothing we can do. A loss is a loss. We can only blame ourselves for not doing our best. Next semester we must do our best." White saw that no one was talking about him, and suddenly felt a little upset. Dake and Sarah walked onto the arena. Professor Cheong-si solemnly said, "I know that everyone has been waiting for this moment for a long time." Dake Dimming from the Aristocrats Academy and Saraswati from the Magisters Academy have both displayed extremely high dueling standards in this competition. Perhaps next semester, you will be able to see them in a real duel. And this has only been 3 months. 3 months ago they were the same as all of you. They were all new students and knew nothing about magic duels. Today, 3 months later, their standards have already reached a level that some people can't even look up to. I hope that after this competition, everyone can go back and reflect on the reasons for this. In the next semester of the first grade, I hope that more students can join the dueling club and become a member of the competition. Enough with the idle chatter. Let the finals begin. As expected of a professor, even a careless person like Pawa Cheong-si could make the students lose interest in just a few words. Dake looked at the silent audience and couldn't help but smile. He put a total of 7 magic cards into the card slot on the table, then looked across and said, "You're here." Sarah raised her chin and said proudly, "I said so." Dake nodded. "Then let us begin the second duel." Sarah, "This time the result will be different." Dake, "That's not necessarily true." Although the exchange between the two sides seemed calm, there was a hidden sharpness. The atmosphere outside the arena, which had been suppressed by Professor Cheong-si's words, rose again. The boys from the Aristocrats' Academy, led by Doran, suddenly shouted, "Dake! Victory! Victory!" The unexpectedly uniform slogan made Dake's ears turn red. The students from the Magister's Academy were also excited by the atmosphere. Heidi, with her braided hair, immediately shouted, "Sarah! Sarah! Invincible! Invincible!" She really didn't feel embarrassed at all. Preparation stage. 30s. Chapter 178. Preparation stage. 30s. Once a duelist stood on the dueling platform, they had to get used to switching their state the moment the countdown started. Although Dake was not a proper duelist, he was already quite experienced in this aspect. His ability to control his emotions had already surpassed most people. Draw 5 cards. The moment his fingertips touched the magic card, a trace of coldness rippled. In the blink of an eye, there were 5 more magic cards in his hand. Fantasy Beast. Ibu. Bliss 3. Remember the website. Vipkanchu. 6. Fairy Ibu. Diru Beast. Kettle Kettle. 5 out of 7. There's still 1 Pride Eye and 1 Trash Slime left. Dake thought and had a plan. With the 5 cards in his hand, the safest method was undoubtedly to start with Kettle Kettle. If Sarah had Sphinx Cat, she would definitely start with Sphinx Cat. Then he could only summon Fantasy Beast. Ibu. In order to prevent Fantasy Beast Ibu from being instantly killed, he could only activate Bliss 3 as soon as possible to evolve it. But relying on Bliss 3 to evolve Moon Ibu unless it was attacked head-on, it would definitely run out of the arena. Without Pride Eye, this was extremely dangerous. But if it was the other way around, counting the magic spirits that Sarah had, other than the 2-star Anubis, there were almost no offensive magic spirits. In addition, Dake's summoning skills were much faster than hers. Sigh. Yu. Sometimes, having too many choices was a problem. Battle stage. 30s. Drip. It was as if the notification dripped into his heart. Dake immediately took out Fantasy Beast, Ibu, and summoned it as quickly as possible. Summoning the Fantasy Beast at the start was because he was confident in his summoning speed. It was also because his opponent's summoning speed was slightly slower. Ibu landed on top of the magic ball and pressed it to the ground. Then, it stepped on the magic ball and rolled to the corner of the arena. Since involuntarily leaving the field did not count as giving up, the corner of the field was actually an excellent defensive position. However, before it could succeed, Sarah had already summoned her first magic guide spirit. As expected, it was a Sphinx. The corner of Dake's mouth twitched, and he immediately took out the second magic card, Bliss 3. At this time, his normal summoning skill cooldown was over, and he only needed 8 seconds to complete the next summoning. That's enough, Ivan. Before she could finish her sentence, Ibuken had already put down the magic ball and was running towards the opposite side with her short legs. Its running speed was really not that fast, so much so that the students outside the field could not help but want to carry it and run on its behalf. Sala wasn't surprised by Ivan's suicidal behavior. Dake had already demonstrated Moon Ibu's evolution in their last match, proving to her the potential of this fantasy beast. Do you want to use that enhancement card? After thinking for a while, Sarah immediately commanded, Sphinx, lock on to it. Although she said that, as long as Ivan was not enhanced, she would not hesitate to command the Sphinx to tear it apart. When the furless black cat heard the command, it immediately moved. Its speed was much faster than Ivan's, but it still needed time to start running, accelerate and approach. During this time, Dake was able to complete the summoning of Bliss 3. The sudden burst of ambiguous light caused the Sphinx to be dazed for a moment. When it recovered, the little Ivan had already evolved into the evil and charming Moon Ibu. Moon Ibu, who had completed its evolution with the help of Bliss 3, was different from the yellow patterns of the normal moon Ibu. Whether it was the circular pattern itself or the faint glow emitted from its body, they all carried a hint of pink. It softly called out, its nose twitching slightly, and naturally turned towards Dake on the platform. Meow heart suit. Then, the charm in its eyes uncontrollably flowed out. Completely ignored the approach of the Sphinx. Good. Both contestants showed a hint of joy on their faces. The Sphinx fiercely stepped on Moon Ibu's shadow with its front paw, activating Shadow Stomp. The pitch-black shadow power climbed onto Moon Ibu's body, completely imprisoning it. Using an uncontrollable Moon Ibu to lure out the Sphinx's Shadow Stomp was not considered a loss in Dake's strategy. But what happened next exceeded Dake's expectations. He had originally planned to let Moon Ibu endure the Shadow Stomp, and with Moon Ibu's strength that far exceeded Kettle Kettle's, it would definitely be able to break free in a shorter time. Then he would be able to use Pride Eye, which he had drawn in the next round, to completely control it. During this time, he would be able to summon the next magic guide fairy faster than Sarah, which was Kettle Kettle. By keeping the magic guide ball in a corner, even Kettle Kettle would be able to protect the magic guide ball for a certain amount of time. And with Sarah's summoning speed, she could only summon 2 magic guide fairies in the first round. Apart from the Sphinx, there was only one left. But Sarah didn't have a 3-star offensive magic guide fairy like the Spirit Bear or the Gold Beast. No matter what she summoned, Kettle Kettle would have plenty to spare. Now, she only needed to wait for the start of the second round to summon the Trash Slime, and then perform a sacrificial summon. At that time, 2 4-star magic guide fairies, one for defense and one for offense, would shatter the blue magic guide ball without killing the magic guide fairy, and she would undoubtedly obtain victory. But the reality was, after being bound by the Shadow Stomp, Moon Ibu's expression froze, and then he turned to glare at the Sphinx. Meow! The Sphinx resisted Moon Ibu's glare and let out a cry. But in the next moment, Moon Ibu's body exploded with an extremely terrifying evil aura. The Sphinx was corroded by that aura, and its hair instantly stood on end in fear. But if that was all, the Sphinx wouldn't have let go of the Shadow Stomp. After Moon Ibu's struggle with his muscles was fruitless, he immediately released the wave of evil. But just as the evil aura began to spread, it was abruptly suppressed. Clearly, this type of skill couldn't be used while in the Shadow Stomp state. But Moon Ivan immediately opened his mouth, and another sure kill skill, Shadow Ball, actually began to slowly gather in his mouth. What was even more shocking was that the shadow energy binding Moon Ibu's body was also gathering in its mouth. Moon Ibu was absorbing the energy of the Shadow Stomp and turning it into a shadow ball. As the shadow ball grew bigger and bigger, the shadow energy on its body also thinned to the limit. The Sphinx clenched its teeth and held on, but its magic power was quickly consumed, and its output couldn't match the absorption power of the shadow ball. Bang! The sound of something breaking could be heard. Moon Ibu had actually shattered the Shadow Stomp. He raised his head and looked down at the Sphinx on the ground, and the shadow ball in his mouth suddenly shot out. Boom! The shockwave from the explosion raised smoke and dust. The Sphinx turned into specks of light in the smoke and dust. At this moment, there wasn't a single magic guide fairy that could block Moon Ibu's advance. This scene was not only beyond Dake's expectations, but also beyond everyone's expectations. Dake had only instinctively summoned Kettle Kettle after the cooldown of the usual summoning spell was over. However, the slight distraction still slowed him down. Cool! The Aristocrat Academy boys couldn't help but shout. If Moon Ibu took advantage of this opportunity to attack the blue square magic guide ball, the curtains would immediately fall on this match. Maybe. It really could. But there were no ifs. After Moon Ibu eliminated the abominable obstacle, it quickly calmed down. It licked its paws, washed its face, and then briskly trotted towards the red team's platform. Seemed to be very happy. Even though Dake had summoned Kettle Kettle, it didn't attract its attention. On the blue team's platform, although Sarah was confused, she took the opportunity to summon her second magic guide fairy, The dead mummy. This made her heart, which had almost jumped out of her chest, return to normal. The duel wasn't over yet. It wasn't time to give up yet. After the dead mummy appeared on stage, it immediately used a bandage to stuff the magic guide ball into its stomach. The first round came to an end. The second round immediately began. The contestants from both sides began to draw their cards. Moon Ibu took the initiative to leave the stage, which was seen as giving up the battle. When Dake summoned Trash Slime from Kettle Kettle's shell, Moon Ibu had already climbed onto the platform and was rubbing its face against Dake's leg. Feeling the soft touch on his leg, Dake's face was stupefied. He began to wait for the cooldown like a robot, and then sacrificed the summoning. The crowd was in an uproar. The students were shocked and puzzled. The professors, on the other hand, had sensed something different. If the spirituality displayed by Dake's magic guide fairies in the previous battle could be explained by tacit understanding, then this time, Moon Ibu undoubtedly displayed a much higher intelligence than normal magic guide fairies. This was inconceivable to most of the archmages. "Claire, did you teach him anything?" Professor Shi Erfu couldn't help but ask. Claire shrugged. "I did teach him a few things, but not this." The duel was still in progress. Sarah glanced at the other side, but didn't have time to think too much. She then summoned the living mummy, and ordered it to use Dark Rebirth to revive the Sphinx. As long as the Sphinx is revived, it won't matter even if Dake's summoning succeeds. This time it won't be broken again, right? 3,000 chapters. Chapter 179. The sobbing voice of a young girl drifted in the air. The living mummy placed his staff in front of him and used the secret technique wholeheartedly. It was indeed that hairless black cat that was resurrected from the magic array. Following the resurrection of the Sphinx, Sarah's summoning area had 3 magic guide fairies. In Dake's summoning area, there was only 1 kettle pot and the trash slime hidden in it. The strength of both sides didn't seem to be equal. But if it was possible, Sarah wanted to immediately teleport the Sphinx over and lock onto that damn kettle pot. However, not long after the Sphinx was resurrected, Dake's sacrificial summoning spell was completed. With kettle pot and trash slime as sacrifices, sacrificial summoning, Diru Beast. Dake raised his magic guide card high. The white light shot out from the card and the light from the 2 sacrifices merged into one, forming a mysterious and complicated sacrificial summoning array. 1 second to remember. https:// Vipkanshu. VIP. That holy and arrogant white cat appeared once again. The Diru beast shook the holy ring on its tail, its eyes full of arrogance. Although the Diru beast refined with the fruit of pride and angel's feather as its core wasn't big, it emitted a powerful aura that ordinary 5-star magic guide fairies didn't have. It crossed its arms and observed the entire duel arena, its eyes shining slightly. The students outside the arena looked at this 4-star magic guide fairy, and felt that the aura it emitted gave them a very familiar feeling. "Yes." Doran hammered his hand and suddenly said, "It gives off the same feeling as Dake sometimes." After being reminded by him, many students immediately recalled. A little fatty said in astonishment, "Could it be that a magic guide fairy's appearance is similar to a magus?" Doran: "It's temperament. Little fatty: "Oh." Doran observed the situation and said, "No. Although Dake has summoned a 4-star magic guide fairy with that black cat, he will be at a disadvantage if there's only one, just like AI Ma. Also, he needs to pay attention to that blood array. The situation isn't good." What made him more worried was that Dake only had 2 cards left in his hand. Without enough cards, it was difficult to deal with unexpected situations. However, after the Diru beast finished observing, it stomped its foot and instantly shot out. Its speed was extremely fast and it was aiming at the most threatening Sphinx cat. "It's coming." Sarah suddenly reminded it. "Shadow step." The Sphinx widened its eyes and waited for the Diru beast's shadow to approach. Then it stomped down. However, the Diru beast suddenly stopped a few meters away from them. The Sphinx subconsciously looked at its face and was suddenly attracted by its pair of clear cat eyes. Woo meow. The Sphinx's consciousness was thrown into chaos after just a brief moment of eye contact. The Dilu beast's eyes emitted a red light, and the corners of its mouth curved into a faint smile. Cat's eyes emit light from the eyes, causing the target to fall into confusion. There is a chance that the target will attack you. Whether it was the Sphinx cat or the two mummies, they were emitting a stench that made it feel abnormally disgusted. If it didn't know their abilities beforehand, the Diru beast would have rushed up and sent them to heaven with its claws. Thinking of this, the Diru beast slightly raised its head and looked at Sarah on the blue side's platform. Its eyes were full of ridicule. Sarah was holding Asben's words of the dead tightly. She suddenly had the absurd feeling of being seen through by a cat. It can't be, right? It can't be. The Diru beast didn't give her any chance to use the secret instrument card. It glanced at the living mummy not far away, and the living mummy was so frightened that it took a few steps back. Then, in a flash, it appeared in front of the other dead mummy. The dead mummy had its back to the field and was quietly peeking behind. Suddenly, its vision darkened and its decaying head fell to the ground. Even though it had a defense of 1,600 points, it was still very weak. The Diru beast's attack was 2,400 points. The two sides weren't on the same level. However, the death mummy was indeed an undying species. Even if its head fell to the ground, it could still struggle at death's door. Its mana is not depleted. The Diru beast flipped the death mummy's body over. It stretched out its finger and lightly cut the bandage on its abdomen. Then, it reached out and scooped up the blue magic conducting ball. Meanwhile, the Diru beast casually raised his hand and blocked the living mummy's staff attack. The living mummy had obviously been ordered by Sarah to die. But of course, the Dilu beast wouldn't give him the chance. With a wave of its hand, it pushed the living mummy away and retreated quickly with the blue magic conducting ball in one hand. In the blink of an eye, it had returned to the red square summoning area and was spinning the blue magic ball like a basketball on its fingertips. Inside and outside the arena, there was complete silence. The Diru beasts avoided all of the traps by going back and forth. There was not the slightest bit of sluggishness in its movements, and the rich expressions on its face showed its high IQ that was not inferior to that of humans. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have believed that it was a magic guide spirit. Professor Shi Erfu's eyelids twitched. He questioned Claire again. "You really didn't teach it this?" Claire was expressionless. "I can't teach it." Even her own magic guide spirits, except for a few, had only reached the intelligence level of 3. 0 was a division standard for intelligence levels. Creatures below 3.0 in the knowledge of magi did not have a complete thinking circuit. They were classified as deficient intelligence. Only when they reached 3.0 and above could they be considered to have spiritual intelligence. They could think completely and have the ability to learn. But above that there were even more grades. The two 4-star magic guide spirits summoned by Dake were clearly above 3.0. That was the lifelong pursuit of most spirit magi. How did he do it? The professors present couldn't help but ask. In the arena, the Diru beast finally stopped playing. It raised its head and looked at Sarah on the blue square. It poked the life barrier on the magic conducting ball twice, as if saying, "What other moves do you have? Just use them." At that moment, Sarah suddenly realized that she had been humiliated by a magic guide spirit. This was a rare experience. Some people would probably never experience this feeling in their entire lives. Sarah was not a gentle little lamb. She immediately summoned the magic bullet curse and threw the magic bullet at the white cat. Bang! Blue magic conducting ball. Magic power. 1,900. Sore throat, fever, medicine, still alive, begging for monthly votes. The weather is turning cold, wear more clothes. Eat less things that are too hot. Woo. Chapter 180. On the red platform. Dake couldn't help but facepalm. At this point, the competition was already over. With a blue magic conducting ball in its hand, the Dilu beast could break the life barrier at any time. On the other hand, Sarah's deck was actually quite helpless against this kind of high-level magic elf with its own control skills. Even if she sent her own fairy to die, the Dilu beast would have to play with her. In fact, Dake didn't give the Dilu beast any instructions. Everything was done by itself. Disclaimer. Saraswati clearly knew that the outcome was already decided. The reason why she summoned the magic bullet curse was to vent her anger. Website. https://vipkanchu. But she didn't think that this magic bullet would make her even angrier. Calm down. Calm down. Think about what father will do. Sala forcefully moved her gaze away from the Dilu beast. Her mind was filled with the proverbs that the ancient sages had told her. Something like, a gentleman takes revenge all day long. Something like 30 years in the east, 30 years in the west, a dragon slayer becomes an evil dragon. Woo, what the hell are they talking about? Sala finally raised her head and used all her strength to glare at Dake. She didn't care whether he saw it or not. She put away her magic conducting cards and recalled her 3 fairies. I, Sala, will never forget the humiliation I suffered today. She turned her head to Professor Cheong-si and said, Professor, I admit defeat. Professor Jones laughed heartily and announced, That's right. This competition is officially over. The champion is Aristocrat House. Dake dimming. Thunderous applause sounded. The Dilu beast's actions were abominable in Sala's eyes. But from the perspective of the audience, they felt that this fairy was too strong. The competition was full of twists and turns. Although it wasn't particularly intense, it was full of psychological warfare. It was also remarkable. Whether it was Dake's Moonibu or Dake's Dilu beast, they all left a deep impression on the audience. When Dake came down from the stage, he was naturally welcomed by the cheers of his classmates. Just as he had said before he went on stage, he had successfully won the championship with the help of his classmates. As for the 5,000 credits awarded to the champion, to him, it was simply a timely help. I finally have money to buy Christmas presents. Dake looked at the students from the aristocratic academy whom he rarely interacted with. He wondered if he should give everyone a gift, such as chocolate or something. Chocolate wasn't expensive anyway. 1 credit could buy a large piece of chocolate. Dake, what are you thinking about? Deanna patted his shoulder. Dake said, Are you thinking about how to use the 5,000 credits? Deanna pouted. Luosi smiled and said, This time, the top 10 will all be rewarded with credits, right? Deanna was happy again. What a simple child. Dake was actually a little envious. This time, even the award ceremony for the in-class competition was very formal. Top 10. In fact, only 8 students were gathered in the middle of the stadium to be encouraged and rewarded by the deans of each school. In the end, as usual, the champion gave a speech. Dake walked to the front and looked at the students who were crying piteously for food. Compared to the last in-class competition, the champion this time was obviously more credible. It seemed that more people were listening attentively. Professor Cheong-si asked, Dimming, how do you feel about winning the championship for the 2nd time? Dake smiled and said, It's the same as last time. It's an honor. The students have improved a lot. I always feel like I'll lose if I'm not careful. Professor Cheong-si said, This isn't something a person who has won all the time should say. Modesty is a virtue, but too much modesty. Dake interrupted. Professor, I'm telling the truth. Professor Cheong-si didn't get angry. She paused and changed the topic. Then, like last time, do you mind sharing your learning experience with the students? Dake smiled and said, I'm happy to improve with the students. Professor Cheong-si pursed her lips and said, Then it's your time now. Dake nodded and looked at the students who were lined up in 4 square formations. He organized his thoughts and said, "I remember last time I mainly talked about the importance of moderation. I also talked about the balance between work and rest. I think that should have helped some of the students." AI Ma nodded vigorously. Dake continued, "Then this time let's change the topic. Let's talk about desire. Desire is the driving force behind human actions. Whether it's eating, sleeping, or reproducing, they are all derived from the desire to survive. Only by facing one's desire can one move forward. Some people think that desire and moderation conflict with each other, but that's not the case. I think that they complement each other. Facing desire and acting on it is one of the reasons why I'm standing here." Dake never lied. In both of his speeches, he spoke about his true feelings. This was the so-called learning experience. He didn't think that what he said was right. But he didn't want to be perfunctory. It was still the same sentence. The truth was already here. It was up to him whether he took it or not. Know it and practice it, or know it and not practice it. It was up to him. But Dake probably didn't expect it. This time, the one who really listened to his words was White Gouda. White's eyes were filled with confusion. Facing desire, what is my desire? Dake shortened his speech to less than 10 minutes this time. He finished everything before some of the students yawned. After that, Professor Jones affirmed his speech and complimented him with a few words. The competition within the class could be considered to have come to an end. Then the first-year students rushed to the cafeteria at the same time. After dinner they dispersed. Today was the third Friday before Christmas. Because Christmas was coming, Traveler Street was already decorated with Christmas decorations. It was said that there was a circus performance. So many people couldn't wait to rush to Traveler Street. The atmosphere of Christmas was getting stronger. Dake rejected Deanna and Luo C's invitation and went back to his dorm alone. He didn't forget to draw today's bliss. Today was December 8th. There was 1 point of pride in the worm branch. Bliss was full of 10 points. 10 points of bliss was enough to make a new Bliss 3. After today's in-class competition, Dake felt that the Bliss 3 made from the goddess, Bliss, was really inconvenient. He needed a Bliss 3 of his own. In addition, the Pride 2 in his hand was actually a defective product. It had a cooldown of 180 minutes and was extremely inconvenient. In the next 2 days he could draw Pride. 3 points of Pride could make a new Pride 2. At critical moments he could also use it alternately. Chapter 181. After making all the preparations, Dake immediately began the crafting of Bliss 3. The crafting of the Great Sin series magic conducting card was actually a relatively simple type. After all, its essence was the crafting of the emotion card. Dake was familiar with the process and quickly used 10 points of bliss to craft a golden pink magic conducting card. As for whether the crafting of this magic conducting card was successful and what was its quality, still needed to be experimented. It's time to work. Dark injected a trace of magic power into his school card to summon the little fiendish beasts that were still wandering outside. Immediately, they flew back with a plop sound. "My dear master, look at what I brought." Following the arrival of the little devil beast, a strong meaty aroma suddenly squeezed into the room. Remember the website, Vipkanshu. Vipidake turned around and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This kid actually got a roasted turkey from God knows where. Unfortunately, even if you get the gem meat, it's useless. The little devil beast seemed to have just felt the strange atmosphere, and its flapping wings suddenly froze, and its gaze slowly turned to the pink magic conducting card in Dake's hand. "No way, sir." It had been a while since the last experiment, and it seemed that the little devil was addicted to picking flowers and gradually forgot about it. Dake felt the need to remind it of the enjoyment of being dominated. Meow meow meow, moo, ing ing ing, the catgrass, cowgrass and foxgrass sounded at the right time. The little devil beast turned its head and glared at them fiercely, and when it turned back, it was already trying to flatter them. "Ah, master, Haven't we already experimented with this pink color? Dake. It's a new category. Put the turkey aside first, come here. The little devil beast. A woman's mouth. Underscore. In fact, the little devil beast was already used to the identity of an experimental lab rat, and it was just being pretentious instinctively. After it put the turkey aside, it flew to the experiment table and lay down like a salmon waiting to be sliced. Dake rubbed its chin, abdomen, and used his index and middle fingers to grab the new magic card. He swiped it lightly in front of him and activated the usual summoning spell. In the name of Dake Dimming, I summon you. In an instant, the entire bedroom was filled with pink light. Meow meow meow, moo 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 ing ing ing. Even the cries of the kitty grass, milkweed, and fox grass became soft. As for the little fiend that was the main target of the spell, it started to absorb the pink light around it after the skull pattern on its head was replaced by the great sin emblem that symbolized bliss. A huge emblem appeared above his head and slowly rotated in the air. Under the illumination of the emblem, the little demonic beast's life essence began to change drastically. Cat ears and a cat tail grew out from the luminous body hidden in the strong light. Dake knew that this Bliss 3 was a success. The little demonic beast's evolved form was still the Heidi Road beast, but it was obvious that this Heidi Road beast was more rational. Then Dake was pushed down by the Heidi Road beast. In this case, the previous Bliss 3 will be temporarily changed to Bliss 3 Moon to distinguish. After looking at the Heidi Road beast that was facing the wall and reflecting, Dake wrote the word controllable on his notebook. Other than being controllable, this Heidi Road beast was no different from the Heidi Road beast that was evolved with Bliss 3 Moon. Even the ultimate skill was the kitty cat fist and dangerous love. The duration of the evolution was 17 minutes, which was about the same as the standard value of 15 minutes. Okay, don't make a fuss. Let's eat the chicken. Dake put down his notebook and reached out to grab the Heidi Road beast's underarm and lifted it up. The only thing left to record was Bliss 3's cooldown. He could continue after eating the roast chicken. In just 56 minutes, Bliss 3's cooldown was finished. It was even shorter than Pride's cooldown of 59 minutes. This meant that the quality of this Bliss 3 was quite good. According to Dake's analysis, the effect lasted for 15 minutes and had a cooldown of 60 minutes. This should be the standard value of a Great Sin series magic guide card. Overall, his luck wasn't bad. But the highlight of the night had just begun. Dake took out Illusory Beast, Ibu, from his card pack. He had previously guessed the difference between Bliss 3 Moon and Bliss 3. He thought that the new Bliss 3 could allow Illusory Beast, Ibu, to evolve into Illusory Beast, Fairy Ibu. And now, it was time to verify his conjecture. The exciting part is about to begin. The little demonic beast sitting on the table had a greasy chicken leg in its raised claws, and the corner of its mouth curved. It loved to see other magic guide fairies being experimented on. What are you looking at? Ibu, who had just been summoned, tilted its head and looked at the little devil beast with an innocent face. Little devil beast, I want to see you broken. Ibu. Little devil beast. Ah. Ibu ignored the little devil beast and happily rubbed against Dake's finger. Evolution is so good. Why are there always idiots who don't understand? Magic Guide Summon. Dake activated Bliss 3. The light released by Bliss 3 was absorbed by the Bliss 3 emblem. Ibu raised its head slightly and the Bliss emblem on its forehead released a charming halo. Surrounded by the light of the fans, Ivan completed his evolution. Ibu, Fairy Ibu. It really is Fairy Ibu. Dake was excited that his conjecture had been verified. Apart from the color of the ribbon, there wasn't much difference between this Fairy Ibu and the 4-star magical elven card, Fairy Ibu. But looking through the appearance to see the essence, the difference between the two was huge. Dake's magic power that he injected into Illusory Beast, Fairy Ibu, received feedback. Card name, Illusory Beast, Fairy Ibu. Type, Fairy card. Race, bird beast. Attribute, fairy. Magic power, 1900. Attack, 1700. Defense, 1300. Ultimate skills. Fairy skin, loud sound, destructive beam. It could be seen. Illusory beast. Fairy Ibu and Fairy Ibu stats were the same, but there were two different ways to distribute their ultimate skills. There were still 3 ultimate skills, which meant that this was an orange card. Fairy skin was a hidden characteristic of Fairy Ibu and had a completely different effect from charming body. Fairy skin changes a normal attribute's ultimate skill to a fairy attribute, increasing the power by 0.2 times. This meant that any normal attribute's ultimate skill in the hands of illusory beast, Fairy Ibu, would be able to unleash 1.2 times the power of a normal attribute skill. As for its next 2 sure kill skills, they were both sure kill skills with normal attributes. Loud sound makes a loud sound and creates a huge vibration to attack. Destructive beam shoots a strong beam of light to attack the opponent. In the next round, the opponent will not be able to move. Loud sound's power was 90, after the upgrade it was 108. And Moon Force's power was only 95. As for destructive beam, it was a super ultimate skill with a power of 150. With the addition of fairy skin, destructive beam's power was as high as 180. What did 180 mean? It was almost twice the power of Moon Force. Without a doubt, this was a super strong attack pet. As for the flaw of not being able to move in the next round, with one shot, perhaps even the ashes would be blown away. What was there to talk about? After carefully thinking about it, Dake suddenly had an idea and summoned Fairy Ibu. Woo! Hugging the 2 Fairy Ibus who were like twins, Dake enjoyed the luxury of hugging one on each side. Other than almost being dismembered, everything else was fine. The next day, Saturday, Dake first went to Traveler Street to buy a new card bag and replenished some necessary experimental supplies. Then he went to the cat flower shop to shop around before returning to the dormitory. Afternoon, he brought his books and went to Professor Claire's dormitory to continue learning the prerequisite knowledge for making the zoo magic conducting card. Although Claire was curious about how his magic conducting fairy was made, she did not ask too much. For Amagus, any kind of original creation method was extremely precious, not to mention this kind of core secret method that could increase the intelligence level of the magic conducting fairy. Whether it was as a Shang-Malian professor or as Dake's teacher, Claire felt that she had an obligation to help him keep this secret. Fortunately, the war had ended, and the number of crazy magi who would do anything to increase their combat power had decreased by a lot. In addition, Dake's identity was sufficiently noble, so he did not have to worry too much about being targeted. What he was afraid of was embezzlement. "I say, Dake, is Auntie good to you?" Claire asked, propping up her chin. Dake, "Auntie Claire, you're too close to me." Claire muttered, "There's something even closer." Dake, Claire, "It's nothing. You should know that the line of beast sages and the line of spirit magi have a master-disciple relationship. Spirit summoning is also a compulsory course for us." Dake, "Of course I know that. In fact, I want to make the zoo in order to form a bond with a magic conducting fairy." Claire nodded. "You've already said this. But here I have to remind you." Dake, Claire said solemnly. "Intelligence level 3. 0 is a dividing line. Magic conducting fairies at this level have a complete thinking circuit and are pure enough. It is relatively easy to form a bond with them." Dake, Claire. "But the human heart is complicated. Magic conducting fairies are the same. Once their intelligence level exceeds 3.0 by too much, then to form a bond with them you have to put in the same amount of effort. In other words, for a magus, the higher the intelligence level of the magic conducting fairy, the better it was. So since ancient times, spirit magi have been pursuing magic conducting fairies with intelligence level 3.0, not 4.0 or 5.0. Dake couldn't help but open his mouth in surprise. This was the first time he had heard this. This wasn't good news for his path as a spirit magus. Who knew how high the intelligence level of his magic conducting fairy was? Claire continued. But don't worry too much. The higher the intelligence level, the more freedom the magic conducting fairy has. As long as you successfully form a bond, they will bring you unimaginable surprises. Dake, for example. Claire was expressionless. For example, when you don't want to wake up, it will crawl out of the magic conducting card and pinch your nose. Dake. The time to concentrate on studying was always short. Dake took the time to go back to the dormitory in the evening and drew a drop of pride. For the first time in a long time. Then on Sunday night, he asked for leave and drew the last drop of great sin, which was pride. After 2 draws, in addition to the original 1 drop, it was a total of 4 drops. 7 p.m. Dake prepared all the materials for the experiment and began to make a new Pride 2. It had been a long time since the first Pride 2 was made, and it wasn't an exaggeration to say that the finished product he had now was a defective product. Whether it was the method of making or the materials used, they weren't good enough. There were only 2 grades of blank magic conducting cards on the market, which were 10 credits and 50 credits respectively. Further up were the very expensive items. The first Pride 2 used a 10-credit magic conducting card, which was the biggest reason for its low quality. And this time, Dake naturally used a 50-credit magic conducting card. The new Pride 2, made from this, could be seen from the color. He still only used 3 points of pride, leaving 1 point. After that, he used these 2 Pride 2 cards for comparison experiments. First, he used it on the little demon beast. In the end, other than its chin being raised a little higher, there wasn't any difference. Dake thought for a while and could only put his hopes on Fantasy Beast. Ibu. Old Pride 2. Duration 13 minutes. CD 180 minutes. New Pride 2. Duration 18 minutes. CD 55 minutes. After recording all the experimental data, Dake summoned Fantasy Beast. Ibu. Ibu was more reasonable than the little demon beast, and accepted Dake's pride, without any resistance. Little Ibu, with the pride emblem on its forehead, slowly climbed down from Dark's knees and jumped onto the window. Only its butt was left on the window as it looked at the night scenery outside the window with fox grass. Dake picked up the Fantasy Beast, Ibu magic conducting card and checked the data. Card name, Fantasy Beast. Type, Sprite card. Level, XXX. Race, Bird Beast. Attribute, Normal. Magic power, 500. Attack, 700. Defense, 300. Ultimate skills, Imitation, Circle Eyes, Help. It went from a purple card to an orange card. This was undoubtedly a huge leap for Ibu. And the new skill it learned was Help. Help. Clap your hands and cheer for the target to enter a state of help. The next ultimate skill of a magic conducting sprite in a state of help is increased by 50%. Ibu had become a nice monster. 2 in 1/4/100. His fever had not subsided, and his cheeks and throat were extremely painful. Every time he ate, it was as if he was going to die. Chapter 182. Come, clap your hands. Under Dake's order, Ibu sat on the windowsill and clapped his hands in disgust. The light representing help appeared from his body and gradually became stronger. Then, like a bubble, it disappeared with a pop. It doesn't work. Dake felt very regretful. It seemed that Ibu's help couldn't be used on him. But then again, nice monsters should be hiding in the back. Why would he go up himself? After packing up the experiment tools, Dark read a book for a while and practiced the underworld spiritual art for an hour. After that, he fell into a deep sleep. There were only 2 weeks left until the end of the semester. In the following days, the professors didn't teach any new knowledge. They mainly focused on reviewing and consolidating. 1 second to remember https://m. Vipkanshu. VIP. Apart from the dual class, all other classes had big homework that the students were required to complete and hand in by December 20th. This big homework would be used as a reference for the students' grades for the semester. The students who were originally excited and out of control due to the arrival of the holidays and Christmas were like wild horses that had been reined in. They were already lethargic at such a young age. Bound by the heavy homework, they even forgot to find a dance partner and prepare gifts for a long time. It wasn't until the 5th day of the new week, on the afternoon of December 15th, that the festive atmosphere on Traveller Street hit them in the face. Only then did the students realize that there was only 1 week left until Christmas. Therefore, the topic of Christmas exploded like crazy. Just like Halloween, Dake began to receive confession letters again. Compared to the more childish first-year students, a mature and steady peer like him was obviously more popular with the girls. Not to mention, just a week ago he won the class competition and was in the limelight. On Friday night, he even received an invitation to a second-year dance party. A girl from the same tower as him put a white letter with a heart on it on his desk in the common room. She said that it was an invitation for her best friend. Dake opened the invitation and looked at it. He was a bit worried. Although it was called an invitation, it was actually a confession letter. The letter was filled with poems and thoughts of a literary girl. She was the type that he did not reject. But how could she reject him without losing her manners? Claire's after-school classes ended last night. Although Dake still had many questions to answer as a professor, Claire had her own responsibilities. She would be very busy in the next week. And as for whether or not he would stay on, or even take over the position of the Dean of the Fools, she still had many things to think about. In the 10 years after the war, apart from staying in the Duke's residence for a long time, Claire had no fixed residence. Wherever she went, she would fulfill someone's wish to travel around. When the war is over, I'll walk around alone, look at the mountains and rivers, and see if the things recorded in the books are really as magical as they seem. Reverse waterfalls, inverted giant trees, a mysterious underground world, an unreachable island in the sky. She had already walked too many roads. Perhaps it was time to stop, rest for a while. He sorted out his gains over the past 2 years. Publish another book and earn some royalties. He couldn't always be said to be a freeloader. Let's discuss it with her when we get back. White and Luo Boat, who were still in confinement, had to devote all their attention to their homework under the supervision of their instructor, Ms. Gliss. In their world, there were no Christmas balls or Christmas presents. The confinement would last until the evening of December 23rd, until Ms. Gliss left the academy. December 24th was their last day. Perhaps that was Professor Shi Erfu's kindness. Otherwise, they would die on their first Christmas in the academy because they only received gifts and did not return them. The Shangmalian weather was getting colder and colder. From time to time, there would be junior magicians who would go to the infirmary to seek special cough medicine because of a cold. Sister Kalyen's work became very busy. It was not because there were more people who caught a cold, but because there were revenge incidents in the academy, just like every Christmas before the arrival of the year. Not everyone could accept rejection. There were as many pranks and revenge as there were stars in the sky. For example, making a pimple on a person's face the size of a finger. For example, making a person's hair grow continuously. Or turning a person's skin into a rich dark purple color. Sister Kalyen had to deal with those strange pranks that did not cause any real harm. Today's Christmas, I can only stay in the academy. Dake began to think of Christmas presents on Friday night. In the past Christmas, he was the one who only received gifts and did not return them. This year, of course, it would not be like that again. Not returning gifts at Christmas was a child's privilege, and the students who entered the Shangmalian had already surpassed that age group. He sat in the common room and wrote down the list of gifts in his notebook. Dianaluo C. Panduola Senior Professor Kazer Professor Claire Professor Lily Little Devil Beast. AI Myovet. In addition to the chocolate gift box for each student of the aristocratic academy, AI Ma and Yalvet were also included in the list of gifts. In any case, he had received a gift from AI Ma during the study of the murals, so he had to return some gifts. As for the gift for his mother, he could ask Professor Claire to send it back. Before Christmas, most of the professors would leave the academy to spend Christmas with their families. Dake had also spent Christmas with Yalvet in the past, and this year could be said to be the first time he spent it alone. I don't know if I don't count, but when I do, I'm shocked. There are as many as 9 gifts that need to be carefully prepared. Let's take it one by one. Deanna, although she may very likely want to receive a candy gift, I happen to have a core material that suits her. Lucy. Maybe I can get a signed edition of Claire's Weekly Travels. Senior sister, think about it again. Professor Kazair. He never lets himself relax. Give him a novel. The Old Knight of the Border is good. Professor Lily. Let's go to Traveller Street tomorrow to see if there is any good wine. Little Devil Beast, pick a scarf, it can also be used as a hat. AI Ma, I don't know what she has been reading recently. I can give her a box of homemade apple juice. Lastly, Mother, hey, I don't know if she will be interested in snapdragons. Chapter 183. Just kidding. I almost forgot about Aunt Claire's gift. Just like Professor Lily. How about giving her a bottle of good wine? As for Mother's gift, I'll give her a pot of normal catgrass. You can't buy this outside. The next Saturday, Dake took a bath after his morning exercise, drank a glass of milk, and went to Traveller Street with the little fiend. The streets were decorated with colorful decorations, and there were all kinds of colorful lights hanging on the eaves. The dolls and billboards in front of the shops were all wearing Christmas hats. The festive atmosphere came faster than expected. In the small garden in the middle of the food street, an unfinished Christmas tree was already standing there. If one came at night, they would see a lot of couples here. The website was https://vipcanshu. VIP Dake avoided the peak period and came early in the morning. He was going to return before noon. When he passed by the candy shop, he thought about it and bought a Christmas candy gift bag. After he left the shop, he had an extra Christmas card in his hand. It seemed that this was a joint activity on Traveller Street, and the shop owner would give out Christmas cards depending on the partner. This saved him the effort of buying alone. Then he spent some time in 2 bookstores to find Claire's Weekly Travels and Old Knight of the Border. Claire's Weekly Travels was unexpectedly popular, and the demand couldn't meet the demand. Therefore, he bought one for himself and wanted to see where Aunt Claire had been all these years. As for Old Knight of the Border, because it was the autobiography of a knight after the war, and he wasn't a famous person, the sales weren't very high. He only found 1 copy in an old bookstore. He was quite lucky. The little fiend deliberately flapped its wings and flew in front of Dake. Because Dake forbade it from speaking in front of others, it could only express itself through sign language. "'Kay, I'll go by yours." Dake sighed and showed a helpless smile. The little fiend suddenly danced in the air. Dake said, "But you can't open it until Christmas." The little fiend nodded desperately. Who doesn't have a sense of ritual? Of course I, the little devil, have them too. This was the first time the beast had received a festive gift. Of course, it had to be opened in a grand manner on the eve of Christmas. Hoo. The little demonic beast couldn't help but laugh. When they arrived in front of a clothing store, the little fiendish beast stopped at the entrance and did not enter. Dake knew that it wanted to maintain its surprise, so it went in alone. As the weather was getting colder, the students' demand for scarves and gloves was increasing. At the same time, there were more shops selling these products. Dake chose carefully and finally chose a thick coffee-colored scarf. In short, the price was not a problem. The quality had to be good. He asked the waitress to wrap it up and put it in a gift box. The young lady couldn't help but tease. "Why? Is this a Christmas present for your little girlfriend?" Dake smiled and said, "No." The young lady asked curiously, "Then who are you giving it to?" Dake. "Ibwa." After walking out of the store, Dake raised the gift box and waved it in front of the little fiend beast. The little fiend beast stared for a long time and resisted the urge to open it immediately. It wanted to use the next week to guess the color and style of the scarf. After settling the most important scarf, Dake went to the tavern where he bought the fairy wine last time. But it seemed like he came too early. This shabby tavern in the corner of Traveler Street was still closed. "Then I'll come back later." After thinking about it, Dake decided to buy some bottles and gift boxes for fruit juice. Of course, there were also apples. The gift for AI Ma should be the cheapest, but it required a lot of effort. After buying everything, he didn't continue shopping. Instead, he went back to the dorm. Because there were too many things in his hands. "Hey Dake, you're back already." As soon as Dake entered the tower, he met Deanna and Luosi, who were fully armed. Although there were still 2 weekends before Christmas, the girls obviously preferred to prepare beforehand. Besides, 2 weekends might not even be enough for them to shop. Deanna and Luosi were going to shop and pick out Christmas gifts. Now that Diana was rich and imposing, her voice was much louder when she spoke. Dake raised the things in his hands and said, "I still have something to do." Deanna had to swallow the invitation she was about to say. "Oh, okay." Dake went back to the dorm, put away the gifts, washed his hands, and began to make the apple juice. The process of making the apple juice was very simple. The main thing was that it took time. With the help of Kettle, Dake spent the whole morning making the apple juice. He added special spices to keep the apple juice fresh and sealed it one by one. Finally, he put it in a gift box and pushed it to the corner. Done. Dake stood up and suddenly felt very fulfilled. He shook his head, packed his things, and went to the cafeteria for lunch. Then he went to Traveler Street again. Traveler Street was obviously more crowded in the afternoon. People were laughing and talking everywhere. Dake carefully felt the atmosphere of the approaching holiday while thinking about what to buy. He hadn't decided on the type of wine and the type of catnip grass. He had no idea what to give to Chen Yushan. Soon he arrived at the catnip flower shop. His eyes were immediately attracted by a ragdoll cat. But after playing with the cat, he walked out empty-handed again. If he really gave her a pot of catnip grass, the fat cat at home would probably be unhappy. "Why don't I wrap the Crimson Star medal as a gift?" Dake couldn't help but mutter. When he came to the small tavern again, the door was already open. Dake pushed the door open and saw the owner of the tavern, Uncle Simmons. Simmons looked like he was in his 40s. His ears were long and pointed. He wasn't a fairy but a male fairy. Dake didn't understand why this tavern, which rarely opened, needed to exist. However, Simmons' winemaking skills were genuine. A treasure like the fairy wine was not something that anyone could brew. "You again. Uncle, is there any more fairy wine?" Dake glanced inside. Sure enough, there wasn't a single customer. Simmons hurriedly waved his hand and said, No, I'll drink the rest myself." Setting up a tavern and selling wine exclusively for him to drink, that would be awesome. Dake wasn't discouraged. "Then, is there any other wine? I want to buy 2 bottles as a Christmas present." "Simmons. Or the sage from last time." Dake nodded. "And Professor Li." Simmons paused for a moment before saying, "Hold on." Then he went into the room. When he came out, he had 3 bottles of wine in his hands. He would continue writing after making some porridge. Chapter 184. "Here, this is the wine you wanted." Simmons shook the 3 bottles of wine in his hand and placed them on the table one by one. "What kind of wine are these?" Dake asked curiously. Simmons chuckled and picked out a bottle. He said, "Take your time. First, this bottle is Morning Dew." Morning Dew. Dake sized it up carefully. This bottle of wine named Morning Dew was contained in a transparent bottle. The wine was light green in color and had the feeling of green apple juice. However, it was clearer and slightly more transparent than green apple juice. This made it feel dreamy. "Don't look at it. No matter how you look, you won't be able to understand it," Simmons said nonchalantly. "Anyway, this bottle is for little Lili Chenghui, 1,000 credits. Dake. Remember the URL. VIP can't you?" He instinctively felt that Simmons was joking. One had to know that he had only spent 100 credits to buy the fairy essence wine. Who would be able to bear the sudden increase of 10 times? However, Simmons ignored his shock and continued to pick out the second bottle, saying, "This bottle is 8 Desolation. Only the Sage of Beasts is worthy of it." The so-called 8 Desolation wine was actually a bottle of strong wine that was as red as fire. Even without opening the bottle, Dake could feel the fire hidden within. It was probably not something that an ordinary wine lover could endure. Simmons continued, "This bottle of 8 Desolation hasn't been able to find a buyer for many years. Since it's a coincidence today, I'll give it to you for free. 2,000 credits. Dake. What kind of free gift was this? Simmons didn't care. He finally picked up the third bottle and put it down. A trace of gentleness flashed through his eyes. This third bottle of wine is called Green Seed. It's just a bottle of fruit wine made from green seed fruit. Green seed fruit was a type of green fruit that was very similar to plums. It was sour and sweet and could be used to make wine. Among the 3 types of wine, only green seed wine was very common and was also relatively cheap. Putting it together with the other 2 types of wine would give people a feeling of incompatibility. However, it was precisely because of this that it was particularly eye-catching. Dake immediately realized that it was the main character of these 3 bottles of wine. Then, as expected, Simmons picked up the green wine and said solemnly, "I know it's hard for the first years to come up with 3,000 credits, but as long as you promise me one thing, these 3 bottles of wine will be yours." Dake asked curiously, "Tell me first." Simmons tapped his middle finger and said, "Since you want to give wine to 2 professors, it should be normal to add one more, right?" After leaving the tavern, Dake wanted to say something but hesitated. "Forget it. Just take it as a favor." He took the 3 bottles of wine and walked into the street. Wine alone was not enough. There had to be gift boxes for wine, and each box had to be stuffed with a Christmas card. Dake strolled around Traveler Street for a long time before he finally found a gift box suitable for wine. After that, he went to the candy store and bought 36 chocolate gift boxes. In order to bring these chocolates back, Dake had no choice but to summon the Dilu beast to help. Before dusk came, he finally rushed back to the dormitory. A huge number of gifts were piled up in the corner like a small mountain. He packed the 3 bottles of wine in the dormitory and felt a little relieved. Now, only the gifts for Mother and Senior are left. Dake thought for a while. He simply sat down and wrote a letter to Yvette. The first time he left home, the kindness of the professors, the friendship of the students, the compact and fulfilling life in the academy, the thirst for knowledge, the thrill and excitement of the moon god incident, the smiles and happiness of the first duel. Also, the daily life of raising catnip grass. Finally, a Crimson Star medal was given as a gift. The most precious gift to his mother had been completed. Finally, only Pan Duola Sr. is left. What does she like? What does she need? Dake suddenly realized that he really knew nothing about his senior. Just because of her appearance, he paid special attention to her. She was no different from those superficial nobles with fat brains. Let me think. 4th year, magic engineering, top student, excellent grades, part-time librarian. Raised a catnip grass. That's all? Dake leaned back in his chair and was in a daze for a while. The original intention of the deal with his senior was that she promised to guide the crafting of the fusion magic card. But in fact, in the spare time for these 2 weeks, Dake had been learning the prerequisite knowledge for crafting the zoo magic card, and he had not finished learning it. In this way, the research of Curse Cage and Fusion was naturally put on hold. The good news was that advanced magic engineering language, resurrection runes, was also within the scope of learning. So his mastery of the magic engineering language was getting deeper day by day, which was beneficial to the crafting of Curse Cage and Fusion. Fusion is temporarily out of the question, but Curse Cage can actually be tried. Also, since I'm free, I can craft 1 or 2 first-tier magic engineering fairies to fill the deck. Tomorrow is Sunday. I'll use one night to prepare. As for Senior's gift, I wonder if she's free next week. Once the decision was made, Dake showed a terrifying ability to take action. That night, he first reviewed the crafting steps of Curse Cage, and identified and familiarized himself with the various materials that he had prepared. The last and most important step was to rely on his own understanding and use the magic engineering language to write his own unique magic incantation. Magic incantations were generally divided into general magic incantations and exclusive magic incantations according to whether they were universal or not. Derived from this were the general magic incantation cards and exclusive magic incantation cards. Due to the crafting process of the magic incantation cards, most of the magic incantation cards belong to exclusive magic incantation cards because they contain the creator's imprint everywhere inside them. Only the creator himself could use them smoothly and freely. If he wanted to sell them on the market, he would need to go through generalization. Generalization was a more advanced crafting process that was very difficult to get involved in. So Dake could only write exclusive magic incantations at the moment. The exclusive limitation of exclusive magic incantations was mainly because the writing of magic incantations was not done one stroke at a time. It involved using one's own magic to let part of the magic engineering language that made up the magic incantation undergo natural evolution, so that the final magic incantation written would be compatible with the sorcerer's own magic. In short, it was very difficult. Until 1 o'clock in the evening, Dake had just finished writing the first step, but it was not perfect. However, the brain that was forcefully boosted by the apple juice was already overloaded, so he had to rest for the night. Sunday morning, 7 o'clock. A light drizzle floated outside the window. After Dake washed up, he temporarily put aside his morning exercise and directly began to further adjust and refine the spell cage magic incantation. At about 7:30, the little devil beast came back with breakfast and today's morning paper. But he didn't stop until 8:30. He tried to empty his mind while eating and then flipped through the Great Sage Daily. The Great Sage Daily, on the weekend, always had some big news to promote sales. This time the newspaper headline belonged to the Holy Church's twin paladins. The twin paladins in the photo were very young and seemed to have graduated from the Holy Church's Mystic Institute last year. They were a pair of twin brother and sister. Blonde hair, blue eyes, and unparalleled handsome. The Holy Church seemed to have the intention to make them the flag of the Holy Church in the new century. Since they were still in the Institute, they had carried out a large-scale publicity campaign. This time in the newspaper, it was because the brother and sister worked together to eliminate a heretical cult. According to the newspaper, it was a terrorist cult that tried to resurrect demons on Christmas Day. As Christmas approached, there were more and more of these organizations. Humans always sought stability in chaos and conspired to create chaos in the midst of stability. The demons were indeed eliminated, but the demons with the demon bloodline still existed. Humans who were inclined to the demons also existed, and even the demon king had not died out. Just like a centipede that died but did not fall down, the demon race's reproduction was different from that of humans. They were oviparous, divided, spun, and even corrupted. It was just that the strength of the demon bloodline generally decreased by rank. The lower the rank, the weaker it was. In other words, the remaining low-ranked demons were not a big threat, but as long as there was one high-ranked demon remaining, it would be a disaster. And the Demon King was undoubtedly the pinnacle of the demon sequence. Once the Demon King was truly resurrected, it wouldn't take too long to revive the demons. If the Demon King here is Voldemort, then is it really a 7-ranked Demon King? Dake put down the newspaper and shook his head slightly. What bullsh asterisk T Demon King, so what if it was resurrected? The 10 years it had been lying in the coffin could be said to be the rapid development period of the new era. Magical technology had exploded, and it was no longer the same as during the war. 10 years ago, the hero had to sacrifice himself to seal it. Now, 10 years later, it might not even be able to withstand a single blow from the Valkyrie. In the original work, it was even eliminated by a hero's son who hadn't graduated yet. This showed how weak it was. As the saying went, knowledge was power. Unless it learned from others to control others, and focused on learning magical technology to become the new era's Demon King, magical type, it wouldn't be much of a threat. In the past 2 years, the Holy Church had been promoting the Demon King threat theory, and frequently released prophecies of the Demon King's resurrection, just to let the Eagle faction take power. Dake saw this very clearly. After all, although he didn't know the process, he knew the ending. He knew that the final boss of the game was not the Demon King, but the Demon God. A Demon King that wasn't even the final boss was just bullying a student. Hey wait, aren't I just a student? Dake fell into deep thought. Around 9:30 a.m. Dake resumed his research and continued to compile and refine the curse cage. It wasn't until 10:30 a.m. that he finally had a satisfactory result. He calmed down and finished his lunch before starting to refine the curse cage. Although the curse cage was a magic card, it needed to be compatible with the refining method of the magic elf card. Just like fusion, it was an extremely special magic card that had the foundation of the magic elven card. Using the curse cage, it could temporarily seal tamed demons, golems, and other simulated life forms and use them as magic elf cards. The first half of refining the curse cage was basically like refining a magic elf card. It only started to change gradually in the second half. Because of the experience of refining the flicker curse, Dake didn't pull his pants down in the second half of the refining process. Therefore, learning was done step by step. If you wanted to eat until you were fat, you had to be fat to begin with. Considering that the refining materials for a curse cage required 1,500 credits, Dake was unprecedentedly serious and cautious. He spent a full 2 hours to prepare and another 1.5 hours to refine it. When he finally succeeded, even he felt that it was incredible. Success on the first try. This meant that his learning of the magic elf language was already at a high level among the second-year students. The completed curse cage was a magic card with a wooden cage on the card surface. There was a spell talisman on each side of the cage with a few key magic elf characters written on it. Dark picked up the curse cage and carefully looked through it several times. Only then did he raise his head with excitement and look around for Ibwa's figure. Until 5 minutes later, the little devil beast that had sneaked out was forcefully summoned back by the Academy card. Little devil beast. Dake shook the curse cage card as if he was showing off. From now on, you can be my magic elf and fight with me on the stage of the duelist. Are you happy? The little devil beast shook its head violently. Not bad. Dake narrowed his eyes. You're so happy that you're delirious. Then he suddenly activated the curse cage. A strong light shone and the base of the cage suddenly appeared under the little devil beast's feet. Then, wooden railings fell from the sky and nailed to the base with a bang 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 sound. Then, a layer of wooden cover covered the top. Golden magic elf characters appeared on each surface of the wooden cage. Finally, a huge word curse was formed. The little devil beast was immediately locked in the curse cage, and then turned into light along with the curse cage and went into the magic elf card in Dake's hand. The surface of the card quickly changed and a world-famous painting, Little Devil Beast Locked in a Cage, was unearthed. Dake reached out his finger, poured magic power into it and poked the cage on the surface of the card. The cage shook slightly and the little devil beast that was locked inside hugged its head with its wings and shrank to the corner of the cage. Dake couldn't help but laugh. Card name, Little Devil Beast. Type, Elf card. Level, Race, Fiend. Attribute, Dark. Magic power, 100. Attack, 100. Defense, 100. Sure kill skill, Small dart. After turning into a magic elf card, the little devil beast could obtain a sure kill skill even if it didn't use Pride Eye. And with the advantage of having wings, it could fly into the sky and avoid most attacks. In the name of Dake Dimming, come out, little devil beast. With the completion of the usual summoning spell, the little devil beast turned into a solid body in the light. The little devil beast that appeared in the form of a normal magic elf for the first time flapped its wings and flew out. Dake grabbed its claws and hugged it in his arms and coaxed, "Be good. As long as you're good enough, I promise that I won't lock you in outside of the duel." The little devil beast. 2 in 1 4,100 words. Chapter 185. After the experiment was over, Dake removed the curse cage. The little magical beast felt the preciousness of freedom for the first time. It flew out of the balcony as if it was escaping, desperately breathing in the air of freedom. Because of this, it felt pity for the magic guide fairies. This mentality was maintained until Dake refined the zoo. Although the curse cage experiment was over, Dake did not stop. He took out the Magic Illusion Beast material package that he had saved 2 months ago from the drawer. According to his original plan, he was going to use this material package to repair Magic Illusion Beast, Ibu, in the future. After all, the fur of Magic Illusion Beasts was very precious and rare. But now it seemed that as long as he had enough credits, he could buy it. The Shangmalian Traveler Street was a wonderful place that was almost illusory. Here one could buy many treasures that could not be seen in the outside world. Remember, https://vipcanshu. VIP. The castle's unique credit system completely separated this place from the outside world's economy. The merchants of Traveler Street, especially the material merchants, were in charge of buying things from the students, processing them, and then reselling them in the shops. And when dealing with rare items, they had to follow the principle of only entering, not exiting. Every time a merchant entered or left the Shangmalian, they had to go through a strict inspection to prevent smuggling. And the significance of owning a small shop in Traveler Street was definitely not in the sense of money. This time, Dake was going to refine another Magic Illusion Beast. Refining a Magic Illusion Beast was very simple for the current him. But before a magister started refining, he would always remind himself that he could not underestimate any refinement. Dake used a few minutes to concentrate before starting to refine the second Magic Illusion Beast. His initial expectation was that he would be able to create another Ibu. If there were 2 Ibis, the card deck's error tolerance would be higher, and his true battle strength would increase greatly. But reason told him that the probability of refining another Ibu was very low, almost zero. The final form of the Magic Illusion Beast was affected by the materials used during refining, time, climate, and many other factors. As for the idealistic meaning of, it depended on the magister's expectations. Although it was a large proportion, it was not decisive. Furthermore, a human's thoughts would change even if it was only 0.1 seconds apart. A change in mentality and self-restraint would lead to a difference in thought during the 2 refinements. It wouldn't become an Ibu just because you yelled that you wanted to refine it. Such thoughts only resurfaced in Dake's mind when the magic card on the experiment table turned into a golden cocoon. He began to look forward to what kind of shape the magical fantasy beast would take after it was refined. Half a minute later, Dake reached out and gently touched the golden cocoon with 3 fingers. Then he poured in his magic power. His thoughts flowed into the cocoon along with the magic power. Immediately after, a trace of rhythm could be felt. It was as if some life had opened its eyes in the cocoon. Golden light shot out from the tiny cracks, spreading to both sides and cutting the light cocoon in half. As the light faded away, there was a magic card with a blurry surface lying quietly on the table. The surroundings of the magic card were actually flashing with a golden halo. Dake reached out 2 fingers and carefully picked it up. The originally blurry and transparent outline on the card immediately began to change after meeting his gaze. As the magical fantasy beast's form gradually stabilized, the surprise in Dake's eyes grew. This is card name, Magical Fantasy Beast, Multiform Monster. Type, Elf card. Level, Race, Elemental. Attribute, Normal. Magic power, 100. Attack, 100. Defense, 100. Ultimate skill, Shapeshifter Transformation. Not Ibu but Multiform Monster. Moreover, among the Magical Fantasy Beast, that was basically a white card, this Magical Fantasy Beast, Multiform Monster had 2 ultimate skills. Wait 2. Wasn't this a gold card? Dake repeatedly confirmed that the halo of the magic card was indeed golden, and couldn't help but feel suspicious. However, he could only keep it in his heart for now and continue to check. There were only 2 sure kill skills on this golden monster of changes. This Shapeshifter ultimate skill was obviously a passive skill that came from the multiform monster's hidden characteristic. Transformation was the only skill of the multiform monster. Shapeshifter, using transformation, does not consume magic power. Transformation transforms into the opponent's appearance and can copy up to the same level as the opponent's partial data, able to use the same ultimate skill as the opponent. Should it be a surprise or a shock? Either way, Dake felt that his emotions were a little out of control. He took some time to calm down and then immediately summoned the Magical Fantasy Beast, Multiform Monster. The polymorph monster that appeared in the light had a soft appearance. It looked like a slightly larger, trash slime. Its body was a light purple color, and its eyes were small like buttons. Its mouth was curved into a small moon. Dake was just about to reach out and touch it when the multiform monster used transformation. As soon as it appeared, with the support of the shapeshifter skill, the multiform monster's transformation skill did not consume any magic power. Therefore, under Dake's gaze, it slowly turned into Dake's appearance. Busy. The 0.5-meter-tall mini Dake reached out to Dake himself. Dake subconsciously took a step back. The multiform monster seemed to be frightened and suddenly began to melt. Soon it turned back into its original 0.3-meter-tall mucus form. Dake hurriedly went up and picked it up. After coaxing it for a long time and waiting for it to regain its smile, he took out Pride Eye and prepared to open intelligence for it. Dake had always thought that the biggest bug in the Big Sin series of magic cards was open intelligence. However, he still did not know if this effect was limited to the magic fairy that he had refined himself. In short, as the dark golden ball of light entered the multiform monster's body, its body rippled slightly and emitted a pleasant aura. Then it squirmed and transformed into a mini Dake again. It opened its mouth and said, "Baba." Dake showed a motherly smile in a daze. Then it was shocked. Although its words were not clear, this multiform monster undoubtedly spoke. Is it because its vocal organs are also simulated to look like a human? Dake touched its head and asked it to quickly change back. After all, it was still very awkward to look at a miniature person standing in front of it. In short, this 100 Faces monster was obviously very different from the real 100 Faces monster in the Pokemon games. This point could already be seen from the information of the ultimate skill that this magic card fed back. The effect of the real multiform monster's shapeshifter characteristic was actually to transform at the moment of meeting, and shapeshifter did not have a level limit. However, the multiform monster that Dake had refined could only copy part of the data of the highest level magic fairy. This part of the data was also very particular. The real multiform monster would copy all the data except for HP. In short, an experiment needed to be carried out. The experimental subject was also ready-made. Dake immediately summoned the little devil beast back. As soon as the little devil beast returned, it found that it was just a new family member and immediately heaved a sigh of relief. Busy, the multiform monster waved at the little devil beast, and then it transformed into the little devil beast's appearance. It was exactly the same. Even the height and weight were the same. There was a clear difference between this appearance and when it transformed into dark. It seems that the multiform monster's transformation also has two modes. One is the ordinary shape change, and the other is the shapeshifter skill. The latter should only be used on magic fairies. Familiar is more or less a special type of magic fairy. Dake picked up the multiform monster magic card and injected magic power. The face of this card had already turned into the little devil beast's appearance. However, the card name did not change. The three values of magic attack and defense could not be seen for the time being because the two were originally the same. However, the skill had become Small Dart. Dake waved at the frightened little devil beast, indicating that it could play by itself. Then, it summoned the only 3-star magic fairy in its hand. Kettle Kettle. The multiform monster's shapeshifter skill could be cancelled at any time. If it was a normal transformation, there was no cooldown. If it was a skill shapeshifter, the cooldown was 3 minutes. Withdrawing the magic card would cause this shapeshifter to be cancelled. For the magic fairy's ultimate skill, a cooldown of 3 minutes was considered very long. However, for a skill like shapeshifter, it was very short. After 3 minutes, the multiform monster transformed into Kettle Kettle. Then, Dake suddenly realized that the number of juicers had doubled. This was obviously good news. It meant that the same amount of juice could be squeezed in half the time. He looked at the multiform monster magic card again. Card name, Magic Beast, Multiform Monster. Type, Fairy card. Level, Race, Insect. Attribute, Rock. Magic power, 100. Attack, 0. Defense, 2200. Ultimate skill, Sturdy, equal strength, equal defense, power trick. As expected, other than the card name, star level and magic power, all the data had changed. This is not much different from the real multiform monster. The skills are exactly the same as well. 2200 defense is more than enough as an early sacrifice. However, each of Kettle Kettle's ultimate skills consumes 100 points of magic power, while the multiform monster only has 100 points of magic power. This is the same as Magic Beast. Ibu's ultimate skill, Imitation. It's gone after it's used up. If I want to use the ultimate skill in a situation where I can guarantee my survival, I need to use a recharge card like Energy Potion. This is nothing in a real battle. But it's a burden in a duel. Dake seriously considered the generalization of the multiform monster, then took out Pride 2 and Bliss 3. The Pride series and Bliss series magic cards had proven that they were not very effective against Trash Slime, Kettle Kettle, and Milk Jar. However, Dake believed that the multiform monster, as a magic beast, had different possibilities from Trash Slime, Kettle Kettle, and other magic fairies. So, before the experiment began, he was looking forward to it. He first used Pride 2. The multiform monster's personality suddenly changed, and it became less clingy. However, when he looked at the magic card, he found that only the magic power had become 200 points. No, it's still in the transformation state. Dake suddenly realized and immediately ordered it to dispel the transformation. After dispelling the transformation, the multiform monster's data had a comprehensive change. Card name, Magic Beast, Multiform Monster. Type, Sprite card. Level, Race, Elemental. Attribute, Normal. Magic power, 200. Attack, 200. Defense, 200. Ultimate skill, Shapeshifter Transformation. Just like Ibu, under the effect of Pride 2, the multiform monster became a 2-star monster, and its magic attack and defense all became 200 points. For a 2-star magic fairy, although a 200 points bucket waste was a bit of an eyesore, compared to the multiform monster's initial data, it had doubled. This meant that after it transformed into Kettle Kettle, it could release at least one ultimate skill. The change in star level made Dake think of a possibility. Could it be? He suddenly felt a little excited. In order to not let Pride 2 affect his observation of Bliss 3, Dake purposely waited until Pride 2's effect disappeared. Then he immediately activated Bliss 3. Under the pink light, the Bliss emblem appeared in the center of the multiform monster's abdomen, and its data began to increase at a speed visible to the naked eye. Card name, Magic Beast, Multiform Monster. Type, Sprite card. Level, Race, Elemental. Attribute, Normal. Magic Power, 400. Attack, 400. Defense, 400. Ultimate Skill, Shapeshifter Transformation, 4-star, 400 points magic power. Of course, this was not the main point. Dake immediately inserted a bit of magic power, and then received the information of the ultimate skill. As expected, Transformation's target range is still a magic fairy of the same rank. This means that after using Bliss 3, the multiform monster can transform into a 4-star to 6-star magic fairy. Furthermore, although 400 points of magic power does not seem to be a lot, it is enough to use many skills. Immediately after, Dake summoned Fairy Ibu to do an experiment and discovered that this was indeed the case. In addition to being excited, he also felt a little regretful. If he had used Bliss 3 Moon previously, he would have been able to enjoy the fun of Fairy Ibu X3. In general, Magic Beast, Multiform Monster was the third gold card in Dake's hands. Perhaps it had a huge flaw, but with the enhancement of the Great Sin series of magic cards, it was indeed a gold card. It was a fruitful harvest. It was a pity that although Magic Beast, Multiform Monster and Little Evil Magical Beast were first-tier magic fairy cards, they were only 1-star. They had plenty of potential, but their attributes were not good. Sometimes they could not be compared to 2-star or 3-star magic fairy cards. Dake still lacked 2-star and 3-star magic fairies that could fight head-on. Then how could he create the 2-star or 3-star magic fairies that he needed? Dake was deep in his thoughts. 2 in 1. 4 out of 100. Begging for monthly votes. Chapter 186. After dinner, Dake listed the remaining core resources in his hands. 1. Pride 1 point. 2. Harpy's Feather. 3. Mermaid Scale. 4. Teddy Bear's Button Eyes. Except for the fourth one, which was a Christmas gift for Deanna, he could use the other 3 as he saw fit. In fact, when Dake obtained the Harpy's Feather, he thought of a magic card in Yu-Gi-Oh! Harpy's Feather Sweep. But that was obviously impractical. There were too many elements needed to refine a magic card. Dake was able to refine the spell cage because there was a ready-made tutorial. Even the magic spell that needed to be written had a basic framework. The first website was https://vipkanshu. VIP. If he were to completely rely on himself to write a magic spell that did not even exist, he would undoubtedly be asking for trouble. So a more practical idea was to use the Harpy's Feather to gamble and see if he could refine a low-star card of the Harpy series. As for the Mermaid Scale, he would naturally refine it in the direction of the mermaid. The mermaid was a symbol of jealousy in the 7 deadly sins. Unfortunately, Dake's jealousy was too little, and he could not use it in the short term. But all these did not matter. After careful consideration, Dake made up his mind to gamble on the card. There was always a price to pay on the road to growth. Even if he failed, it did not matter if he lost some materials. But what if he succeeded? Maybe there would be an unexpected gain. He did as he thought. Dake looked at the clock on the wall. It was exactly 7 o'clock in the evening. If he was fast enough, he could complete 2 experiments before 9 o'clock. He quickly began to prepare. The basic refining method was the most random refining method. If he was lucky enough, and the materials added were precious enough, there was even a probability of refining a high-star magic elven card. Of course, the probability was very low. Basically, it was like buying a lottery belonging to the category of IQ tax. So, limiting the preciousness of the materials within a certain range, and aiming for the first-tier magic card was the most suitable and practical. Dake used half an hour to complete the preliminary production of the first magic card. After activating the number 1 refining formation, he began to put in the core materials. The first was the harpy's feather. Perhaps the power contained in the harpy's feather was enough. After putting in this feather, the light of the number 1 refining formation was already very strong. Before he was done, Dake did not forget to drip some of his saliva into the potion according to the professor's instructions. Saliva was actually an excellent catalyst in the process of refining magic elven cards. This was because human saliva contained rich elements that could promote the formation of life. The effect of the saliva was obvious. After the light of refining formation number 1 reached its limit, it quickly faded away. After that, some black impurities overflowed from the surface of the card and gradually covered the magic card. 2 minutes later, the magic card finally stopped reacting. Dake took out a tool and carefully scraped off part of the black impurities that covered the magic card. He then used a pair of tweezers to rinse it under the tap for a moment. As more than half of the stains on the surface were washed away, the corners of the magic card were exposed, gradually emitting a blue glow. "It's a blue card." Dake's heart skipped a beat and he revealed a look of joy. Of course, he would not fantasize about a gold card. As long as it was not a white card, it was already a huge profit. After a while, Dake placed the washed magic card on the table and observed it carefully. The pattern on the card was not the harpy he had imagined, but the eagle wrestler, that was more like an eagle. The eagle wrestler was a type of Pokemon. It was less than a meter tall when it stood up. At first glance, it looked like a wrestler wearing an eagle's helmet. Its face had a blue-green mask-like pattern, and there were 3 orange feathers on top of its head. It spread its wings, red on the outside and green on the inside like a cloak. It was quite handsome. It's a 3-star card. Card name, Eagle Wrestler. Type, Elven card. Level, *****. Race, bird/beast. Attribute, fighting/flying. Magic power, 1100. Attack, 1500. Defense, 1200. Ultimate skill, Feather Dance. It's a very standard 3-star blue card. Full 1500 attack power is a bonus. The ultimate skill is Feather Dance. In the original work, it was a skill that could directly reduce a person's attack power by 2 levels, but it's obviously different here. Feather Dance. Scatter feathers around the opponent, blocking their attacks. In short, it was a good skill similar to a smoke bomb. The usage of this ultimate skill was obviously not limited to scattering it on the opponent. If used well, it could be used as a control skill to block the opponent's line of sight. At this point, Dake was already very used to the fact that the magic fairy he refined was biased towards Pokemon. Not only was he not surprised, but he also began to look forward to the next magic fairy. In the world of Pokemon, what would a Pokemon based on a mermaid be? Minus. No, it seems to be based on an oarfish. Of course, he did not immediately start refining the next magic fairy. Instead, he first summoned the Eagle Wrestler and did some experiments. Pride I, Pride II, Bliss 3. After using the 3 Great Sin cards one by one, Dake put the Eagle Wrestler back into the card. It could not be said that he was disappointed. The Eagle Wrestler was originally a Pokemon that did not have the potential to evolve. Perhaps using more precious materials could refine a higher star-level Eagle Wrestler, but using the Great Sin cards would obviously not allow it to evolve further. However, this was also in line with Dake's initial expectations. A 3-star magic fairy that could fight head-on. Got it. The second experiment began in full swing. Dake quickly completed the preliminary steps and advanced to the final step of throwing in the materials. This time, the core material was naturally the mermaid scale. Dake carefully threw the mermaid scale into the light emitted by the first refining array. As the scale was swallowed by the light, he retracted his hand, carefully observed it, and then put it in his saliva. However, this time, the light of the refining array was still flickering. At this time, if there was envy, Dake would definitely put it in. However, he only had a little pride left, and it was still in the insect branch. What should he do? Dake's gaze began to wander. That teddy bear button eye was definitely not going to work. Putting in more than 2 cores was a big taboo for basic refining. Then, he could only add in some supplementary materials. And the supplementary materials that he could casually take out really did exist. Ding! Dake's eyes flashed, and his gaze stopped on the 3 cat plants waiting to be stroked. These 3 different types of cat plants, one had bred the pride fruit, and the other 2 had bred the bliss fruit. After the fruits ripened and were not plucked away, the thin stems of the fruits were left on their heads. The 3 thin stems that looked like a hoe became the meat in Dake's eyes. When it comes to mermaids, other than envy, there is only bliss. And there are 2 bliss fruit roots here. Dake immediately walked over and carried back the first cat plant that pounced on him. Then, he caught the second fox plant that pounced on him and stretched out the evil scissors on its head. Gotcha! Fox grass called out softly. It felt as if it had lost something important, and it felt a little empty. So, it leaned closer to Dake's arms. But the cruel and heartless Dake abandoned it after using it and turned his target to the cow plant. Gotcha! Moo! The cow plant was at a loss. Dake, who had obtained 2 bliss roots, quickly went back and forth and threw one of them into the light of the number 1 refining array. As the refining array swallowed the thin stem, the light gradually stabilized. But it was not enough. Dake immediately put in the second thin stem. As expected, the light became stronger and stronger. The entire refining array began to operate at high speed. The materials that were thrown in were fused and digested by the refining array, and the process of extracting the essence and removing the impurities began. Some black and green impurities were expelled. The more essential things were retained. It was another familiar scene. As these impurities that came out of nowhere were expelled, the entire refining process was unusually smooth. Dake could not help but show a look of anticipation. The basic refining method actually had a failure rate and it was quite high. However, he succeeded 3 times. He did not know if it was the credit of the saliva, or if he was really born with good luck. After the refining of the magic card was completed, Dake cleaned it and found that it was actually a 2-star purple card. What was displayed on the card was an exceptionally cute sea lion cub. This sea lion had smooth blue skin, a pure white mouth, a shaking beard, and a pink ball-shaped nose. There was a light blue collar around its neck, a pair of forelimbs and a tail fin at the front and back of its body. In short, it was super cute. Card name, Ball Sea Lion. Type, Sprite card. Level, Race, Bird Beast. Attribute, Water. Magic Power, 500. Attack, 700. Defense, 300. Killing Technique, Moist Voice, Charming Voice. Compared to the Harpy Man, Dake obviously liked this Ball Sea Lion more. Although it was only 2-star, as one of the 3 families of the Pokemon Sun and Moon chapter, the Ball Sea Lion had an extremely huge evolution potential. Ball Sea Lion, Rippling Sea Lion, West Lion Sea Wren. The final evolution form, West Lion Sea Wren, was a Pokemon that was based on the mermaid. From the data panel, the 3 measurements of the Ball Sea Lion could only be said to be average among the 2-star Pokemon, very similar to the 2-star Ibu. However, as a purple card it had 2 skills. One was the passive skill evolved from the hidden characteristic, Moist Voice, and the other was the fairy skill, Charming Voice. Moist Voice. All sound moves become water attribute. Charming Voice. Make a charming voice and inflict mental damage to the opponent. Every magic sprite had its own attribute. Under normal circumstances, when using the killing techniques of other attributes, the power would be greatly reduced. Only by using the killing techniques of its own attribute could it be fully unleashed. Moist Voice was similar to Fantasy Beast. Fairy Ibu's Fairy Skin. It was a passive skill that converted other attributes into its own attribute. However, Moist Voice did not have any additional power. It was a pity that the only killing technique, charming voice, was not very powerful. Even after it was converted into a skill of its own attribute, there was nothing to write home about. As Fairy Ibu had charming voice, Dake was not unfamiliar with it. However, without charming body as a base, Ball Sea Lion could not unleash the charming effect of charming voice. This was truly regrettable. In the evolution chain of the Ball Sea Lion, both the Ball Sea Lion and the Rippling Sea Lion were pure water attributes. Only the final evolution form, West Lion Sea Wren, had additional fairy attributes. This meant that the evolution of West Lion Sea Wren would most likely require the Bliss series of magic cards. However, that was already the second evolution. Before that, Dake needed to figure out how to make Ball Sea Lion evolve into Rippling Sea Lion. The Pride series of cards obviously would not work. The Bliss series of cards had some possibility. However, Envy was the first choice. Envy's symbol was Mercury, and its attribute was biased towards water. It was a great sin that was perfectly compatible with the mermaid. However, Dake still summoned Ball Sea Lion, and used 3 great sin cards one after another, treating it as spiritual intelligence. As expected, the first 2 Pride cards did not have much effect. Although the Bliss 3 card triggered some phenomena, it could not promote the evolution of Ball Sea Lion. There was also no sign of Illusory Beast, Ivan Rising in Stars. Clearly, Fantasy Beast Ibu was special. Like Fantasy Beast, ever-changing monster, any type of great sin card would work on it. Momo. Alright, touch. Dake was a little helpless as he dealt with the blissful Ball Sea Lion. He temporarily put aside his thoughts of cleaning up. That was the end of the day's experiment. He had gained a lot. Dake looked back and suddenly realized that he had cultivated Curse Cage, Fantasy Beast, Ever-Changing Monster, Falconer Wrestling, and Ball Sea Lion in one day. Total of 4 magic cards. It could be said that he had spent a very fulfilling day. It could be considered as a good preparation. With these 4 magic cards, his card set was further improved. When he signed up for the Duel Club next year, he would be able to perform better. The only magic cards left are Fusion and Zoo. There's still a long way to go for Zoo. I can try Fusion as soon as possible. Whether it succeeds or fails, I have to take this step. I'll treat the 1,500 credit materials as buying experience. I wonder when Senior Sister will be free. 2-in-1. 4,000 words. Chapter 187. In the blink of an eye, it was already the last week of the first semester. On Wednesday of this week, after the students handed in their final big homework of the semester, they suddenly relaxed. It was Wednesday afternoon. The second class in the morning was the last summoning class. Professor Shi Erfu explained clearly what to do during the holiday. Because there was only a short 1-week and 2-day holiday, there was no homework assigned during this short holiday. This made the students who had worked hard for a semester laugh as they walked on the road. And because the Shangmalian castle was located in the outskirts of the kingdom on the surface, it was very far from the center of the kingdom. Therefore, only a small number of students could complete a round trip in these 9 days. But if they spent most of their time on the road, it was obviously meaningless. So very few students chose to go home. But unlike the students, even if the professors didn't go home, they would still want to go out for a walk. They had all kinds of needs. After Friday, a large number of professors would leave the castle. Professor Claire was one of them. Of course, she wouldn't take the slow magic car. Remember the website, Vipkanshu. 6. It would take at least a week to go from the castle to the capital, including changing stations and other needs. That was really too long. Claire was always riding a dragon. And for creatures like dragons, even if it was a tamed flying dragon, it wouldn't let anyone other than its master sit on its back. Fortunately, Dake didn't want to hitch a ride from the beginning. The first Christmas with the students in the academy would be a very important part of the little mage's learning life. According to statistics, There were no more than 5 first-year students who chose to go home at this time every year. The weather was getting colder. Even the school uniform with the function of keeping warm was gradually useless. The students began to add scarves around their necks and put on all kinds of gloves. And scarves and gloves had become the rare decorations that didn't violate the school rules. The girls couldn't change out of the damn school uniform, so they thought of ways to change their scarves and gloves to make themselves more beautiful and tasteful. Every time the little demon flew outside the castle, it would proudly think, "Among all the magical spirits, only I, the little demon, have scarves." 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Dake met with the senior at the entrance of the library. They had made an appointment the previous night to find the lab that afternoon and research the making of the fusion card together. Senior Panduola had experience in making fusion, but she had only managed to make 3 of them, and she had failed many times. This showed how difficult it was to refine fusion. Dake had long given up hope of success. If it weren't for the fact that he wanted to take this opportunity to understand Chan Yushan better, he would have continued to study her for a few months before making his move. However, personally experimenting was actually a good way to speed up learning. It was just that the cost was a little high. "Senior, have you handed in your homework too?" Panduola looked relaxed and happy. It seemed that even this silver dragon girl could not withstand the killing power of the big task. She added, "I'll be free until Christmas. Only a few times a year." Dake asked curiously, "What about after Christmas?" Panduola, "I'm going on a long trip." Why did he say that it was a long trip? Because Shangmalian was her home. His only home. Dake did not ask why she was going out. Instead, he changed the topic back to school. For example, he casually asked her when she started working part-time as a librarian. Panduola told him that it was the 2nd month of the first year, when Traveller Street was first opened to the first years. When everyone was pulling each other and running to Traveller Street, she stayed in the library all day and was noticed by Ms. Bella. Ms. Bella was really a kind person. Every time Panduola mentioned her, there would be a hint of admiration on her face. Dake could tell that she respected Ms. Bella as a mother. This made him realize very quickly. Chen Yushan's background was not good. She probably did not have any relatives. Before trying to understand her, Dake did not feel a trace of sadness from her. Was that a manifestation of strength? Or was it just a facade? Or was it just because he did not really want to understand her that he did not notice it? This was very different from the impression that Chan Yushan Panduola had always given him. The more Dake understood her, the more he felt that he was really shallow. Women always seemed to have a delicate softness hidden deep in their hearts. They were used to wrapping a layer of steel around their soft hearts. There was more than one woman with such a personality around Dake. Panduola Doragon was only 15 years old. Her opportunity to enter the Shangmalian came from an invitation to school. There were basically 2 ways to enroll Shangmalian students. One was active. The other was passive. Every summer vacation, the school would take the initiative to look for children with high magic reactions. These children who exceeded a certain magic index would easily trigger the magic runaway phenomenon if they did not receive the correct magic education. This phenomenon was once called the sign of the birth of the devil in ancient times. The children who triggered this phenomenon were labeled as the son of the devil and would be executed. Dake Diming was actually one of the victims of this phenomenon. The culprit of the magic runaway was the second Princess Anna. This was the biggest reason for the deterioration of the relationship between the 2 sides. Among the first-year students, many students were actively recruited by the school. Otherwise, with their family background, they would not even be able to come into contact with the Shangmalian. The other passive method was the so-called application for school. Many students of the aristocratic academy were admitted through their parents' application and then after a test. The school would charge a certain amount of tuition fees according to the family background of these students. On the surface, the school would also accept donations. Of course, Compared to the enormous amount of teaching resources of the Shangmalian, the donations were completely inadequate. The school itself was an unusually large economy, and they relied on themselves to make money. On one hand, opening a school was a tradition that had been passed down since ancient times. On the other hand, among the students that Dake was more familiar with, Luo Boat, White, and Luo Si were all actively recruited by the school. Ai Ma, Sarah, and D Anna were applications that their parents helped them submit. Even if the applications were not submitted, the three of them would still receive invitations. Also, Dake himself was also one of the people who were actively recruited. If it were not for the invitation that suddenly flew in, he would still be in the Duke's mansion, exposed to the cold wind. The Duchess wanted him to enter the school 1 year later. The reason was that he was mentally incomplete. In other words, Mother is worried. There were basically no classes on Wednesday afternoon. But most of the students preferred to stay in the common room with the fireplace. In the castle where no one was passing through, the cold wind blew gently. Dake and Panduola came to the laboratory that they had borrowed in advance, inserted the key, and unlocked the door. The unique smell of the laboratory hit them in the face. Dake went in first, and then quickly prepared for the experiment. Panduola asked, "Have you finished writing the fusion spell?" Dake said awkwardly, "There were some obstacles." Panduola laughed. "If there are any problems, just say it. Our main goal this afternoon is to adjust the fusion spell to a usable level. It's harder than you think." Dake replied, "I'm already mentally prepared." That being said, but Panduola was not someone who would teach you how to flap your wings and how to run. She was more like an eagle who would throw a baby bird off a cliff to learn how to fly. You still had to do everything yourself. She would only give you some pointers at crucial moments. The more complicated the spell, the more things needed to be involved. There were a lot of links that needed to be analyzed and filtered through experiments. Through the experimental reaction, he could determine whether each incantation, and even the usage of each charm was correct. It was indeed much more difficult than Dake imagined. Because he had successfully written a usable spell cage spell, he took it for granted. The difficulty level of the two was completely different, and once they were immersed, neither of them was in the mood to chat. It was soon 6:30 in the evening, and the sky outside was already dark. They had not even started the experiment yet. Dake packed up his tools and said, "Senior, I'll treat you tonight." Panduola asked curiously, "Treat? In the cafeteria?" Dake smiled mysteriously and pointed up. What did it feel like to stand on top of a castle? It was hard for people who had not experienced it firsthand. "Oh!" Dake opened his arms and welcomed the wind. Other than the spiral clock tower, this was the highest place in Shangmalian. Now that Professor Didi had resigned, few people would be so free as to climb to the top of the clock tower to look around. The probability of them being discovered was reduced to the lowest. Standing on top of the castle and looking down, although the entire castle could not be seen, it was the perfect immersion that made it even more magnificent. Shangmalian castles were an art that had been passed down since ancient times. From the structure, decorations, and reliefs of the castle, one could almost find traces of every era. Dake was immersed in it and almost forgot about the girl beside him. Panduola reached out and pressed down her hair that was blown away by the wind, but she did not care. Not long after, the little fiend holding a basket with its claws and flapping its wings hard appeared in sight. This enchanting scenic spot was actually discovered by the little fiendish magical beast. It had nothing to do, so it liked to lie on this high place and roll around. Pandora couldn't help but cover the corner of her mouth when she saw how hard the little monster was working. "Is this your familiar?" Dake nodded proudly. Panduola also summoned her familiar. It was a cute little dragon with 2 small wings. Its big belly made it look like a Western dragon, but if one looked closely, they would find that it was just an Eastern dragon with a round belly. It was just a little short. "Go!" Panduola pointed at the little dragon's belly, and it reluctantly turned its head and flew towards the little fiend. With the help of the two familiars, the heavy basket full of tools and ingredients was finally pulled up. Dake took the basket and took out his tools to skillfully assemble it. This was a set of barbecue tools borrowed from the halfling chefs. The vegetables and meat in the basket had already been cut and washed. They were all handled by the halfling chefs with smiles on their faces after hearing his explanation. Dake did not know if there were any students before him who had done this before, but at least there were no legends of them in the academy. He quickly used his magic to ignite the small magic stove, and the flames from the stove licked the bottom of the barbecue grill. Looking at Panduola, who had a look of reminiscence, Dake took the opportunity to ask, "Senior, have you ever made barbecue?" Panduola pursed her lips and said, "I have. In the wild, barbecue is the simplest method that can be done without tools." There was no fluctuation in her tone, but it made Dake's expression stagnate. He braced himself and asked, "Is it a trip in the wild?" Panduola chuckled and said, "It's to survive. People couldn't be lumped together." Dake used to think that even if his barbecue skills were not the best, they were above average. But not long after, he became an existence that was only fit to serve as an assistant. The little fiend monster did not even look at his finished product, but focused all its attention on the barbecue in Panduola's hands, saliva dripping from the corner of its mouth. A rich aroma was constantly emitted. Panduola displayed heart-wrenching cooking skills. In the eyes of outsiders, she was supposed to be a young miss who did not do any household chores. Smoke rose in spirals and people were everywhere. After eating and drinking to their fill, they lay down on the ground. The moon in the clouds, the shadow in the moon. The winter night sky was as clear as a jade. Two people, two demonic spirits, just lay there quietly. Dake had a lot of questions to ask, but he did not ask them. Panduola's eyes were already blurred, as if she was entangled by thoughts. 9 o'clock sharp. The biological clock rang in her heart. Panduola glanced in the direction of the clock tower, pressed down the hem of her school uniform, and slowly got up. "It's time to go." Dake also moved. He turned around and picked up the little fiend monster that had started snoring at some point. Enchanters were truly wonderful creatures. They did not need to eat or sleep. Yet he could eat and sleep. Dake held it like holding a baby, and his other hand picked up a basket full of tools and kitchen waste. Then he went downstairs with the senior. Walking in the quiet castle, both sides tacitly did not make a sound. It was as if they were walking side by side in a long history, and it was a little intoxicating. Panduola would sometimes suddenly turn, and Dake would follow. Along the way, they did not encounter a patrolling golem. When they reached the second floor of the castle, Dake sent her to the bridge of the Magic Academy's tower. Panduola walked across the bridge in a few steps, and turned around at the other end of the bridge, one hand pressing down on the hem of her skirt, the other hand gently stroking her hair, and revealed a bright smile. "I'm very happy tonight." "Me too." The two waved at each other. The moonlight was very beautiful. 2 in 1 4,000. Chapter 188. Back in the dormitory, Dake put the little beasts on the bed, covered them with a blanket, and went into the bathroom to take a shower. The hot water flowed down, gradually waking him up. Looking back on today, in addition to the inadvertent increase of bliss, his research on fusion spell deepened. In the next 2 days, he needed to seize the time to continue his research and perfect the last bit of the spell. If he could finish the writing by noon on Friday, he could ask his senior sister out to conduct the first experiment of fusion card refinement. He planned to decide on a Christmas gift for her after that. Drip. The sound of water dripping gradually stopped. Dake walked out of the bathroom, comforted the 3 catnip plants, got into bed, lay down and read for a while. Remember in 1 second. https://vipkanshu. VIP. When his hair was naturally dry, He gradually fell asleep. The next Thursday, Dake came to the common lounge as usual. When winter came, the magic flame in the fireplace would not go out for a long time. The common lounge was always warm, and there were more and more students who liked to stay here. Dake sometimes came a little late and found that there were already 2 or 3 people reading books and newspapers inside. But in the early morning, everyone was not in high spirits and would not casually talk. Today's Great Sage Daily was still focused on Christmas-related topics. But it rarely mentioned the Shangmalian Academy. Perhaps because the Halloween incident did have some negative effects, the Academy was trying to avoid being a topic. On the other hand, the Academy of the Sacred Sect almost occupied most of the pages during this period. Christmas, as the name implied, was to celebrate the birth of the saint. The so-called saint was God and also human. In the scriptures of the Sacred Sect, the saint was the first human. His name was Saint, and he was one of the oldest gods. Before his arrival, there was no human in the world. After his arrival, the first human appeared in the world, which was himself. He was the beginning of human, and also the root of human. He was the ancestor of all human beings in the world. The most core theory in the scriptures of the Sacred Sect was the theory of God and human. It meant that human beings were the descendants of God and the blood of God flowed in everyone's veins. Based on this theory, the theory of human supremacy was established. It meant that, other than the gods, the race with the noblest bloodline in the world was the human race. Therefore, the saint was a firm believer in the pure-blooded humans. It opposed all foreign races and foreign hybrids, and its discrimination against subhumans was deeply rooted. It believed that subhumans were an inferior species that only deserved to crawl under the feet of humans. During the war, in order to jointly resist the powerful demon race, the humans and the subhumans signed the 100 Races Alliance Treaty. The saint was the biggest opponent. But as the war situation worsened, the Holy Church was forced to swallow the humiliation and sign the alliance treaty that was extremely humiliating to them. So as soon as the war was over, there was a public clamor for tearing up the treaty in the Holy Church. This was one of the reasons why the Holy Church was able to reach a consensus with the Eagle faction led by Prince Charles. In comparison, the Shangmalian Academy's attitude towards the demi-humans was very friendly. It could be said that it was completely opposite to the philosophy of the saint. Many of the professors in the academy were even subhumans or hybrids. The conflict between the two sides was almost irreconcilable. This year's Christmas, the Holy Church would unite with the Academy of Mystics to hold a large mass in the church. At that time, the prince would lead a group of nobles to participate and use this to promote their common position. The afternoon. In the last 10 minutes of the history of magic, Claire told the students about the uncertainty of her next itinerary. If I don't decide to come down, then today may be the last time we see each other. Her tone was very flat, and there was no special nostalgia. But the students were obviously more excited. Most of them thought that she would continue to teach until she took over the position of the Dean of the Fool. After all, she was so suitable. "Professor, did we not satisfy you?" A student from the Academy of Magic raised his hand. Claire was a little surprised by her question and couldn't help but laugh. "No, you are all excellent, except for a few students." Several students who were once turned into pigs suddenly lowered their heads. Claire said softly, "It's just that everyone has their own itinerary. Some people like to stay in one place for a long time, and some people are not suitable to stay in one place for a long time. The Shangmalian is just one of the stops on my itinerary. I haven't decided yet. It seems that I will stay for a long time." A student from the Academy of Fools immediately raised his hand. "Professor, will you attend this year's Christmas?" Claire shook her head slightly. "I'm sorry I can't spend a warm Christmas with you here. I still have someone to accompany. She's crying because she can only spend Christmas alone this year." Dake covered his forehead. Saraswati from the Academy of Magic raised her hand and said, "Professor, I like you very much. I hope you can stay." Claire smiled slightly. I like you very much too. Sarah immediately sat down with a blush on her face. AI Ma from the Academy of Knights immediately raised his hand. Professor Kate, if you don't come next semester, who will replace you? Claire thought for a moment. I didn't ask a RTI, but I don't think she will disappoint you. During the many questions and answers, 10 minutes passed in the blink of an eye. When the bell rang, Claire waved to the students, not leaving a single piglet behind. Dark quickly picked up his bag and followed her out the door under her secret signal. The classroom was in an uproar because of this unexpected news. Walking in the wide hallway, Claire said, I'm leaving at noon tomorrow. How's your gift? Dake nodded. It's ready. Claire said, send it to my dorm that night. Don't worry, I won't peek. Dake's face darkened. If you didn't mention it, I wouldn't have thought that you would peek. Should I use Morse code to translate it when I go back? He asked. Aunt Claire, are you sure you don't want to reconsider? Claire, I'm going back to think about it. Dake pursed his lips, knowing that this matter was probably over. Her hesitation meant that deep down in her heart, she didn't have the determination to stay. Even if she stayed under Yvette's suggestion, it wasn't a decision she could make on her own. Dake didn't want Claire to make a choice against her own will just to take care of him. It seemed that he really had to add something in that letter. He just didn't know who the professor of the history of magic would be next semester. After pondering for a moment, he asked, will you continue traveling? Claire glanced at him and smiled. I'm going to take a break for 2 or 3 years. If I don't come back to teach next semester, I'll stay at your place. Dark heaved a sigh of relief. Claire continued, right, I've already stored your Christmas gift in a RTI's place. It was time to figure out the character designs and illustrations. Chapter 189. The two separated at the fork in the road. Dake returned to the dormitory and went to Claire's office with the gifts before nightfall. Sure enough, Claire was in the office, worrying about how to tidy things up. Her office wasn't messy, but there were a lot of books. Many of them were borrowed from the library, and they needed to be returned one by one. Some of them were bought from Traveler Street, and if they wanted to take them out of the academy, they needed to go through a review process. However, with Claire's status, she must have gotten permission from the principal of a RTI. Let me help. Dake put the gifts aside for the time being and began to roll up his sleeves to sort them out. Claire, who was still acting like an adult not long ago, couldn't help but blush. She sighed in her heart about the passing of time and didn't reject it. Half an hour later. The website was https://vipcanshu. VIP Dake sorted out the books marked by the library. He summoned the Diru beast and had it carry the books to the library. Claire took the rest of the things and left the office. Although Dake came to the library less frequently, he was still familiar with every corner here. He had the Diru beast move the small mountain of books to the counter. Then he explained the matter to Senior Panduola and they registered the books together. Every time Panduola finished registering a book, she would use her authority as an administrator to drive the magic circuit of the library and send the book back to its original place. As the books grew wings and flew away, the pile of books on the counter became shorter and shorter. Both sides had room to speak. Panduola exclaimed, "Are these the books that Professor Kate borrowed? She borrowed 1 or 2 books every day, and I didn't expect there to be so many. I really want to know if she has a special way of reading books." Dake said, "Maybe she is a sage." Panduola, "How is your fusion spell going?" Dake, "I did some fishing in class and made some progress, but it's still difficult." Panduola, "It's normal that it's difficult. The fusion curse is one of the hardest curses to overcome even in our 4th grade courses. It's already very rare for you to make such progress." Dake shrugged. "Maybe it's because my computing power is especially strong." He didn't learn advanced mathematics for nothing. Panduola was also curious. "I always feel that your arithmetic skills are better than mine." Did you come up with the vertical calculation method and the mnemonic table? Dake. It's just a small trick. After sorting out the books, Dake said goodbye to his senior and went straight to Claire's dormitory. However, as soon as he opened the door, he found that it was full of animals jumping around. Dake touched his forehead. He always felt that if Aunt Claire was unreliable, even Yvette would have to step aside. She had obviously opened the venue card for the zoo in the dormitory, but there were obviously too many animals that were released to unpack her luggage. The animals were doing everything they could to compete for her attention. There were even 2 monkeys that were tugging at the sleeves of a piece of clothing. Dake originally wanted to help unpack, but he didn't expect that there were already too many people inside. Looks like I don't need help. Thus he closed the door and wanted to run. Don't! Claire's cry for help came from inside. After most of the items were unpacked, the two went to the cafeteria to have a relatively sumptuous dinner. Dake let go of his appetite and gave Claire enough face despite the gluttony +1 prompt. Eat more. You can only grow taller if you eat more. Claire kept putting food in his bowl, but she didn't eat much. Although it wasn't particularly obvious, Dake still felt that the feeling she gave off was decisively different from when she first came to the castle. She came like duckweed, but when she was about to leave, she had roots. It was a very hazy feeling. But in short, it was changing in a good direction. Dake wasn't so worried. After drinking and eating to their heart's content, they went their separate ways. Claire needed to hurry up and visit the professors of various subjects. Dake also had his own research to do. The winter night was cold, and the moon was bright and the stars were few. Dake studied on the experiment table until nearly 10 o'clock and finally made some breakthroughs. He breathed a sigh of relief and went to the balcony. He bent down to pick up the milkweed that rubbed against him and looked up at the moon. 1 or 2 bats flew across his field of vision, which made him a little surprised. There were bats in the castle, but as the winter got longer, the bats should be less active. But that was the habit of ordinary bats. There were also some special bats that didn't follow this rule of hibernation. His thoughts left as soon as he touched it. Dake didn't pay too much attention to it. He turned his gaze slightly and looked in the direction of the teacher's dormitory. Having such a family member in the academy gave people a very different feeling. Although the night of learning the prerequisite knowledge of zoo with Claire was busy, the feeling of being compact and fulfilling was easy to form a habit. After a week of suspension, he felt a little empty. It seemed that he had lost the race against time. He shook his head and held back the growing sense of loss in his heart. What a coincidence. Claire was also looking at the castle under the night sky from the balcony of the dormitory. Her expression was absent-minded, but her eyes were focused on a certain area. If one studied the terrain of the castle, they would find that it was an area where the secret passages were concentrated. Only those who had gone deep into the secret passages knew that there was a space-folding phenomenon in the secret passages. The actual unfolded area was larger than the entire castle. Claire had also gone deep into the secret passages. But she didn't have the childlike innocence of the hero and the Valkyrie. She didn't leave the so-called treasure in the secret passages. But at that time, their exploration of the secret passages was still superficial. They only knew that the secret passages were magical, but they didn't know that the secret passages could be magical to this extent. Halloween. The resurrection ceremony of the moon goddess. Even if this matter had been published in the newspaper, there were still very few people who could see the details of it. Claire agreed to Urtiai's invitation because she wanted to find a place to calm down, and also because of this. In these years of traveling, even if the beautiful scenery and cultural customs of various places were admirable, the hole in her heart was not filled after turning those experiences into pictures and drawings. Instead, it became deeper and deeper. This led to several irritable outbursts. It really caused a little trouble. Claire's mouth curved slightly. The days when she came to the academy did calm her down. She also had some clear goals. It was what she wanted to do. It wasn't what others wanted to do. The dead were dead after all. The survivors had to continue living. People couldn't always live in the past. Sorry, Peter. You're tuning in to the Whispers of Romance YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.